Part 1. 86 Buddhist Story. 1. I want to find God. Once a master living in solitude was meditating by a riverside. One young man came to know about that and thought of going to meet him. So, one day a young man came to him and said, "Master, I wish to become your disciple because I want to find God." Suddenly, Master jumped up and grabbed the young man by his neck and dragged him into the river and plunged his head under water. After Master held young man there for a minute, young man tried to kick and struggle to free himself. Finally, Master pulled him up out of river. Young man coughed up water and gasped to get his breath. Eventually, young man quieted down and was able to breathe properly. After this, Master asked him, "Tell me, what did you wanted most of all when you were underwater?" "Air," young man replied. Master replied, "Very well. Now God home and come back to me when you want God as much as you wanted air." 2. Peaceful Warrior Secret to Win. Once lived a great warrior who was quite old but still was able to defeat any challenger. He was famous throughout the island and had many students gathered to study under him. One day, a young warrior arrived at village was determined to be the first one to defeat great warrior. He had great strength, and along with it he had the ability to find out the weakness of his opponent and use it against his opponent during fight. In every fight he would wait for his opponent to make the first move so that he can understand his weakness, and then would strike with great speed and force. It was known that no one ever lasted a battle against him after first move. Much against the advice of his concerned students, the old master gladly accepted the young warrior's challenge. On the day of battle, all gathered at the place of fight. As the battle began, young man started to insult old master. He threw dust at him and spit in his face, but old master stood motionless. For hours, young man verbally assaulted him with every kind of insult known. Still old man stood calmly in front of him. Finally, young warrior was exhausted and he knew he was defeated and left place in shame. Students were disappointed that their master didn't fight young warrior even after hearing such insults from him. So they gathered around master and asked him how you were able to endure such indignity and what was the reason that drove the young warrior away. Old master gave a very beautiful reply. He said, "If someone comes to give you a gift and you do not receive it, then to whom does it belong?" 3. Uncertainty of objective world. Once a monk who was specialized in Buddhist precepts was walking at night. It was dark all around and by mistake he stepped on something. Thing which got under monk's feet made a squishing sound, and this made him think that he must have stepped on egg-bearing frog, and because of dark, he couldn't see, so even with that doubtful thought he went on to his place. Because being a monk and follower of Buddhist precept against taking life. Finally, even with the uncertainty in his mind about that thing, he went to sleep, and that night in his dream he saw that 100 of frogs came demanding his life. Monk got terribly disturbed and was not able to sleep, and then when morning came he went to same place and looked over that thing which was crushed by his foot. He found that it was just an overripe eggplant. At that moment his uncertainty stopped, and for the first time he realized the meaning of saying, "There is no objective world." And from that day he knew true meaning of life and know how to practice Zen. 4. Way to achieve goal. One day master was watching a practice session in courtyard. All students were doing their practices. Among all those students he noticed that there was one young man who was trying to perfect his technique, but he is not able to work on that move properly, and it seemed to master that young man was getting disturbed by the presence of other students. Master could sense that young man's frustration and went up to young man and tapped on his shoulder. He questioned to young man, "What's bothering you?" Young man replied with strained expression, "I don't know. I don't understand why I am not able to execute this move properly, no matter how much I try." Master replied, "Listen, before you can master technique, you should understand harmony. Come with me. I will explain you how you can do that." Master and student left building and walked some distance into forest until they reach a stream. After reaching there, master and student stood silently on the bank of stream for some time. After a while, master spoke to young man pointing at the stream. "Look at the stream. See, there are rocks in its way. Does it slam them out of frustration? No. It will not slam those rocks, but instead stream will simply flow around them and move on. Be like water, and you will know what harmony is." Young man understood master's advice and went back to courtyard to practice his move, and this time he concentrated his focus on move and barely notice other students around him, and then he was able to executed the perfect move and master that technique. 5. Zen Master and his dog. Once a Zen master had a dog. Dog loved his evening play with his master. Daily they used to play a game in evening. Master used to throw the stick and dog would go ahead to fetch a stick and run back and give ball to master and sit there wiggling tail waiting for next game. There were many students who used to learn from master, but one student used to question a lot about contradictions in Buddhist doctrine. So one particular evening, when master was out with his dog to play, he also invited this student to join him. Master said, "You must understand that words which are used to teach you are just guideposts. So never let words or symbols get in the way of truth." "Let me show you," master continued. With this, teacher called his dog, then pointed his finger toward moon and said, "Fetch me the moon." "Tell me, where is my dog looking?" master asked his student who was standing there with master. "He is looking at your finger," student answered. Master looked in student's eyes and said, "Exactly. Don't be like my dog. Don't confuse the pointing finger with the thing that it is being pointed at. You need to understand that all Buddhist words are only guideposts, and every man fight his way through other men's word to find his own truth." 6. Insult and praise. A person went to Abbot and asked him, "What would be the best way to please God?" "Go to cemetery and insult the dead," replied Abbot. Person did was told to do by Abbot. Next day he came back to Abbot. When Abbot met Person, asked him, "Did they respond?" Person answered, "No, they didn't." Then Abbot said to Person, "Go praise them instead." Person obeyed his orders and did same. Next day again, same person came to see Abbot. Today again, Abbot asked same question. Did they responded? "No, they didn't," Person replied. Now Abbot told him, "In order to please God, do exactly same. Take no notice of men's scorn or of their praise. In that way you will be able to find your own path." 7. Coating of silver. G. Once a very rich man went to see a monk in order to seek advice from him about what he should do with his life. What's purpose of his life? Monk led him over to window and asked him, "Can you see through the glass? If yes, tell me what you see." Man replied, "I can see people coming and going along the street, and there is a blind man begging for alms in the streets." Now monk led him toward a large mirror and asked, "Now look in mirror and tell me what you see." After looking at the mirror, man replied, "I can see myself in the mirror." Monk looked a rich man, smiled, and said, "You can see yourself, and you can't see others." Monk continued, "Did you notice that window and the mirror both are made of same basic building material, but because mirror is coated with fine layer of silver, all you can see is yourself? Same is with humans. You will only be worth anything when you have courage to tearing away that coating of silver covering your eyes and being able to see and feel compassion and love for your fellow man. 8. Can win but still lose. Why? Once a young man came to abbot of monastery and said, "I really want to become a monk, but I haven't learned anything of importance in my life. Only thing I know is how to play chess because that's what I have been learning from my father from young age, but I want to get led the path of enlightenment, and playing chess doesn't lead to enlightenment. Beside, I was told that all games are sinful. Abbot replied, yes, they can be sinful, but they can also be diversion. Perhaps monastery need little of both. So Abbot called for chessboard and summoned a monk from monastery to play with young man. However, before game he said, we may need diversion, but we cannot have everyone playing chess here all the time, so only the best player will stay. If monk loses, he will have to leave monastery, creating an opening for young man in monastery. Everyone knew that Abbot was very serious about what he said, and then the game began. When game started, young man knew he could win and played aggressively, but as time passed, he noticed the saintly look in monk's eyes who was playing against him. Suddenly, young man began to play bad, thinking that he would rather lose to monk, as he felt that presence of monk in monastery will prove more useful to the world than him. Abbot, who was there watching all this, understood young man feeling and suddenly overturned the chessboard on floor and said to young man, you have learned far more than you were taught. Abbot continued and said, my dear, you have power to concentrate which is necessary to win, and you are also capable of fighting for what you want, but with all that you also have compassion and ability to sacrifice yourself for others. You have shown yourself as capable of balancing discipline and mercy. You are welcome to our monastery. 9. Choice, heaven or hell. One day a very famous samurai came to Zen master Hakuin. Being a samurai, he knew only about life and death, so he just wanted to know where were the gates of heaven and hell, so that when the time comes he could escape hell and go to heaven. So he asked Master, where is paradise? Where is hell? Where are gates for both? In reply, Master questioned him, who are you? Samurai replied, I am leader of samurais. I am a warrior, and even emperor pays tribute to me. Master laughed and said, really? You are leader of samurais? But you like someone poor to me. Samurai pride was hurt. He forgot why he came to Master and at the same moment whipped out his sword and pointed it toward Master to kill him. As he pointed sword toward Master, Master started to laugh and said, this is the gate to hell. You will open it with your ego by holding sword in anger. Samurai realized his mistake and calmed down and sheathed his sword. Master continued, now, when you calm down, you open the gate of heaven. Moral: gate to both heaven and hell are inside us. If you are not conscious enough and act out of anger, paves path to the gate of hell, and if you are conscious and keep calm at times, this will step toward gate to heaven. Heaven and hell are not afterlife. They are here and now. These gates are always open, but your choices at any moment in life pave path for you if it's gonna be heaven or hell. 10. Trust in God. An emperor asked to monk, I would like to see your God. How can I see it? Monk replied, it's impossible. You cannot see God. Listening to this reply, emperor questioned, impossible? If I cannot see God, how can I entrust my life to God? Okay, can you show me the pocket in which you have placed love for your wife, and then let me weigh that love in order to see how large it is, said monk. Emperor, find this question strange, so said, don't be silly. How can love be kept in pocket? No one can measure love or can keep it in pocket. Monk answer to emperor was, you cannot see love, yet you are capable of falling in love with your wife and entrust your life to her. Still is it not clear that there are certain things which we cannot see but still trust? 11. Where God doesn't live. One of the great monk once was studying the traditions of his people. One of his friends said to him jokingly, I will give you a florin, gold coin, if you tell me where does God lives. Monk replied, I will give you 2 florin, gold coins, if you tell me where he doesn't live. 12. If I were God, it is said that once great Rabbi Baal Shem was standing on top of a hill with a group of students when he saw bandits attacking city below and massacring people. Seeing so many people dying and begging of mercy, he cried out, "Oh, if only I were God!" Students got shocked, and one of student turned to him and said, "Master, how can you utter such thing? Do you means if you were God you would have acted differently? Do you means that you think God does the wrong?" Rabbi looked into student eyes and said, "God is always right, but if I were God, I would have been able to understand why all this I happening." 13. Buddha remains cool. Gautama Buddha used to go out with a begging bowl to collect a morsel of food for the day. As soon as he appeared in front of a house, the lady of the house would come out with some cooked food and offer it Buddha. Buddha would accept it, thank the lady, and go away. One day, Buddha was passing through a village he had never been to before. He knocked on the door of one of the houses. The lady of this house was a bitter person. She was furious to see a monk with a begging bowl standing at her doorstep. She started abusing him. "Shirker! You want to eat food without working for it," she shouted. Buddha stood without a reply. "You look fit enough to work. Why don't you work, you fool?" she screamed. The lady went on abusing Buddha, calling him names. Buddha stood listening without reacting, waiting for her to finish. At last she paused to catch her breath. Then she said, "Why are you standing like a stone? Why don't you say something, monk?" she taunted. "Mother, an offering has been made, but if it is not accepted, to whom does it belong?" Buddha asked. "I offer you nothing, you lazy monk," said the woman impatiently. "Mother, ever since I came to your door, you have been offering me whatever you have," said Buddha gently. The lady was intelligent. She at once knew the monk was referring to the abuses she was heaping on him. "And your question is, if the offering is not accepted, to whom does it belong?" Buddha completed the sentence for her. The woman got the message. She fell at Buddha's feet. She went inside and brought some food for him. Buddha thanked her and moved on. 14. Free Bird. One morning, Prince Siddhartha and his cousin Devadatta went for a walk in the woods. Siddhartha pointed out a swan flying in the sky to Devadatta. Before Siddhartha could stop him, Devadatta shot an arrow at it. Struck by the arrow, the bird went down. Both the boys ran towards it. Siddhartha was the first to reach the spot. He picked up the bird, gently removed the arrow, and nursed its wound. Just then, Devadatta reached the spot. "Give me the bird, it's mine," said Devadatta. Siddhartha refused to part with the bird. Devadatta took his cousin to court for justice. "I shot the arrow and brought the bird down. It belongs to me," said Devadatta. "I nursed its wound," said Siddhartha. The judge looked at the bird Siddhartha was holding. "Had the bird been killed by your arrow, you could have claimed it," said the judge. "But Siddhartha saved it. The bird belongs to the one who saved it and not to the one who tried to kill it," said the wise judge. By that time the wound had healed and the bird had fully recovered. Siddhartha went out and let the bird go. "The bird is free. It belongs to no one," said Siddhartha, as he watched the swan fly high in the air. 15. 3 knots in rope. One morning when disciples and people were waiting for Buddha for discourse, they were amazed to see that he had bought something with him. On closer look, they saw that he had bought a rope in his hand. Buddha took seat and without saying anything to anyone, he started tying knots in the rope. After tying knots, Buddha asked everyone, "I have tied 3 knots in this rope. Now I want to know from you whether this is same rope, which was before knots or not." One disciple replied, "This is bit difficult to answer. It really depends on way we look. From one point of view, the rope is same. it has not changed. In another way, now it has 3 knots which were not there before. It can be called changed. But it is also worth noting that even though it seems to have changed from outside, but from inside, it is still same as it was before. Its basic remains unchanged. Buddha smiled and said, "It is true." "Now, I will untie these knots," said Buddha. Then he began to pull 2 ends of ropes away from each other. While doing this, he asked, "What do you think? By pulling them like this, can I untie these knots?" "No, no. Doing this will tighten knots even more and would make it more difficult to untie them," replied a disciple. Buddha said, "Okay, now one last question. Tell us what we have to do to untie these knots." Disciple replied, "For this, we have to look closely at these knots so that we know how they were put on, and then we can try to untie them." Buddha said, "That's what I wanted to hear. I see most of people want to solve problems without knowing reason, real cause of problem. No one asks me why do I get angry. They ask how to put an end to their anger. No one asks where did the seed of ego come from in me. They ask how do I get rid of my ego. Just as rope doesn't change its basic form, even if it is tied in knots, similarly, the seeds of goodness do not perish from within a human being due to some disorder. Just as we can untie the knots of rope, we can also solve human problems. Understand this thing that if there is life, there will be problems too, and if there are problems, then there will be solutions too. It is necessary that we know the cause of any problem well, then solution will be achieved automatically. 16. Elephant trapped in muddy pond. A king had many elephants. One of them was very powerful, obedient, and skilled in fighting. He went with king in many wars and was king's favorite. As time passed, Elephant got old and king cared for him and would not take him to war with him anymore. One day, Elephant went to nearby pond to drink water and his leg got stuck there. Elephant tried a lot but couldn't get himself out of pond. At last he gave up. Soon, servants noticed Elephant and went toward pond. News of trapped Elephant reached king. Many people gathered there with king and many efforts were made to get Elephant out of that muddy pond, but still all went in vain. At same time, Gautama Buddha was passing by that place. People went to him and asked for help. Gautama Buddha inquired about the elephant and then inspected the spot. Then he said to king, "Drums of war should be played around elephant." King asked his servants to bring drums and soon sound of drums of war surrounded elephant, and with that there was a change in expression of elephant. He stood up and tried coming out of muddy pond with enthusiasm by himself, and soon he was out. People were surprised to see that and asked Buddha, "We tried so much but still couldn't get him out, but now elephant came out by himself. How is this possible?" Buddha said, "There was no shortage of physical ability. We just needed to motivate him. Because elephant used to go to wars and he was not able to go there anymore, he lost his desire and will. Using drums helped him get his enthusiasm back." 17. Blind man and his friend's argument. Once Buddha was visiting a small village. There people got to know about his visit and started to come to him about their problems. One day, some people brought a blind man to him and said, "He is blind. We are his closest friends. We told him about light, but he is not ready to accept the fact that there is light. His argument are such that we are at loss. Even though we know that there is light, we have to admit defeat. He tell us that he wants to touch light. How can we make it possible for him to touch light?" Just then blind man said, "Okay, if I cannot touch it, I have ears, make sound of light, so that I can hear it. If it's not possible to even hear it, then I want to taste it, or if light has fragrance, I want to smell it." His friend said, "There is not way to convince him. Light can only be seen with eyes and he has no eyes. He complains that village people are unnecessarily talking about light just to prove he was blind." He felt that we invented the story of light just to prove him blind. Blind man friends asked Buddha if he could make him understand about light. Buddha replied, "I am not going to try to convince him. Mankind problems have been created by people who tried to explain things to those who cannot see. I won't make that mistake. I will not explain to a blind man that there is light. You have brought him to wrong person." Friends still insisted to Buddha. Buddha replied, "There is no need to bring him to me. Take him instead to a physician who can treat his eyes. He does not need preaching, he needs treatment. This is not question of explanations or of him believing things you tell. If his eyes get cured, there will be no need for you to explain. He himself will be able to see and know light." Friends understood what Buddha said and took blind man to a physician for treatment. Fortunately, he was cured after few months. By that time, Buddha had already left that village. Blind man followed him and bowed to Buddha and said, "I was wrong. There is light, but I couldn't see before. Therefore, I didn't believe anything about light." Buddha answered, "You were certainly wrong, but your eyes got cured because you refused to accept or believe what others told you, unless you experience it for yourself. If you had accepted what your friends had told, then matter would have ended there and no question of treatment for your eyes would have arisen." 18. Young man request. One day a young man went to Buddha and seemed very upset. Buddha asked him reason. Young man told him that his father has died and he wants to perform best after life rituals for his father, and despite of his father's good or bad actions in his life, he wants his father's soul to go to heaven. He said, "I could have gone to any ordinary priest, but I have come to you with this request. I want you to perform after-life ritual for him so that in his afterlife he can gain entry to heaven and permanently resides there." Buddha listened to man and said, "Go to market and buy 2 earthen pots. Also bring some butter and some pebbles to fill in the pot." Young man went to market and bought them, thinking that this was for ritual. Then young man filled 1 pot with butter and another with pebbles and sealed them. Buddha then told him to put them in a nearby pond. Young boy did as said, and both pots sank to the bottom of pond. Now Buddha asked him to bring a stout stick and strike both pots and break them open. He did so, thinking that now the Buddha would perform a wonderful ritual for his father. As young man hit pots and break them open, the butter escaped from first and floated to the surface, whereas stones from other pots settled at bottom. Buddha said, "I have done this much. Now call all your priests. Let them come and pray. O pebbles, rise to the surface. O butter, sink to bottom." Young man replied, "Are you joking? How is it possible? It is against law of nature. Pebbles are heavier than water. They are bound to stay down. Can't float where, as butter is lighter than water, it is bound to float, cannot go down." Buddha replied, "Young man, you know so much about nature, yet you do not want to understand the law that is applicable to one and all. If your father kept performing actions like pebbles and stones, wrong, he was bound to go down. Then no one can pull him up, and if he kept performing actions which are lighter than butter, right, he is bound to go up. Then no one can push him down." Our difficulty is that we think that some invisible power will somehow favor us, even though we do nothing to change our own behavior pattern, our own actions. We should understand that this is eternal law of nature. Fruits depends on our actions. Therefore, we must be careful about our actions in daily life and do only good. 19. Buddha and Philosopher, Power of Silence. Once a great philosopher came to Buddha. He had a lot of questions to ask. He came to Buddha and started asking questions to him. Buddha listened to him and said, "Do you really want answer? If you really want it, can you pay the price?" Philosopher replied, My whole life I have been searching for answers. I received many answers, but from every answer I got, new questions raised. What price do you ask? I am ready to pay the full price. I just want answers to these questions and want to leave this earth with these questions answered. Buddha said, "Good. Most people want answers but are not willing to pay price. That's why I asked you. Sit in silence for 2 years. This is the price. Sit near me in silence for 2 years, and when 2 years passed, I myself will tell you to ask questions. At that time you can ask whatever you want answered. I promise that I will answer everything. I will dispel all doubts. But for 2 years you have to sit completely still and silent. Don't bring it up for 2 years." Philosopher was thinking whether to say yes or not. He thought to himself, 2 years is long time. Will he answer my questions then? He asked to Buddha, "Do you give full assurance that you will answer my every question after 2 years?" Buddha replied, "I give complete assurance. If you ask, then I will definitely answer, but if you do not ask, who will I answer?" Just at that time, a disciple who was sitting in meditation under a tree nearby began to laugh. Philosopher asked to Buddha, "Why is he laughing?" Buddha replied, "Ask him." Philosopher went to disciple and asked him reason. Disciple replied, "If you want to ask something, ask now. I was deceived in same way. He made fool of me too. But I can tell you he is telling truth. If you ask after 2 years, he will definitely answer, but who asks after 2 years? I have sat here silently for 2 years and not he goes on prodding me, saying, 'Ask brother.' After remaining silent for 2 years, nothing remains to be asked. Every answer is received. If you want to ask now. Otherwise, after 2 years, nothing will be left to ask." Philosopher wanted to know answers, so he stayed there with Buddha. He would sit every day silently. He had forgotten track of time because one whose thoughts have become slow, they lose awareness of time. But Buddha remembered exact time. When 2 years were over, Buddha went to Philosopher, said, "Now you can ask any question. I will answer each and everything as I promised. Do you have something to ask?" Philosopher started laughing and said, "That disciple was right. Now when I have been sitting here for 2 years, I have nothing left to ask. Through your grace, all answer has come." 20. Buddha's Wisdom. Once Buddha was sitting under a tree. A man came to him and started abusing him. After abusing Buddha, that man stood there waiting for some Buddha's response or reaction, but to his surprise, there wasn't even slightest change in Buddha's expression. Man got more angry and used more insulting words to insult Buddha. Still, he didn't got any reaction or response from him. This kept on going for few hours. At last, man got tired and asked Buddha, "I have been abusing you, insulting you, yet you are not angry at me?" Buddha replied, "It's because I haven't accepted it." Man got confused and questioned, "But you heard it, every single word, didn't you?" Buddha smiled and replied, "I don't need abuse. Then why would I hear it?" Man got more confused and stood there. Buddha understood his confusion and explained it further. "All those abuse remains with you." Man replied, "I have said all those words to you. How would it remain with me?" Buddha questioned, "Suppose you give someone coins, and if that person doesn't accept those coins, then with whom will those coins remain?" Man replied, "If person doesn't accept those, then coins would remain with me." After listening to man's reply, Buddha smiled and said to him, "You are right. Same happened with abuse. When you came here and abused me, said those insulting words, but since I haven't accepted a single abuse from you, then all those abuse would remain with you. So I have no reason to be angry with you." Man understood his mistake and apologized to Buddha. 21. Way to calm mind. Once Buddha with his followers was traveling from one town to another town. While traveling, they walked by a lake. After some time, they all stopped to rest. After all settled down, one of his disciples asked him, "How can we calm mind when we have disturbing thoughts?" Buddha was sitting under a tree and said to him, "I am feeling thirsty. Can you bring me some water from that lake?" Disciple walked back to lake and noticed that some people were washing clothes, so walked some distance to get clean water and sat there to collect. But as he was going to collect water, a bullock cart passed by, and water became muddy. Disciple waited, but one or other things were going on there, and water was still muddy. So he thought to himself that he can't give such muddy water, as it is not fit to drink, so he decided to go back without water. Disciple came back empty-handed and told Buddha about it. After an hour, Buddha asked him to go back to lake and bring some water. Disciple went back to lake, and this time he was able to find clean water. He filled pot with water and brought it back to Buddha. Disciple gave water to Buddha and said, "Last time I went there was a lot of mud in water, but now water on the surface of lake was clean. How?" Buddha replied, "When you went last time, mud was unsettled and it was mixed with water on surface, and water became unfit to drink. But when you went after an hour, mud settled down on its own, and you got clean water that was fit for drinking. Your mind is like that also. When it is disturbed, give it some time and it will settle down on its own. You don't have to put effort to calm it, and with time, your mind will be calm effortlessly." 22. Effect of teaching in life. Buddha used to give discourse to his followers. Not only people from village, but many people from faraway places would come to listen to his discourse. A person used to come from far away every day to listen to discourse given by Buddha. For about a month, he continued to come to listen to discourse. He listened very carefully to every word Buddha said and would return when discourse ended. One day, after discourse was over, man stayed. After everyone left, he went to Buddha and said, "I want to ask you something." Buddha replied, "Ask." Man said, "I've been listening very carefully to your teachings every day for a month. I remember everything you said, but they are not having any effect in my life. I'm starting to wonder if there is something that I lack." Buddha asked, "Where do you live?" Man replied, "At Sravasti, a nearby village." Buddha asked, "How do you come here?" Man replied, "Sometimes on foot, sometimes by horse cart, sometimes by bullock cart." Then Buddha said, "Tell me, will you be able to reach back your home right now just by sitting here?" Man replied, "How is that possible? How can I reach my home just by sitting here? I have to walk to get there. Even if I don't go on foot, a means of transport will be needed to reach there, such as bullock cart or horse." Buddha said, "Right. One has to walk to reach the destination. Destination cannot be reached without moving. Similarly, to bring change into life, one has to follow these teachings. These teachings are not effective in life just by listening. You also have to behave accordingly. Apply these teachings in your life. Follow the path, and then you will be able to see positive change in your life." Learning. We hear so many good and bad things in a day. We listen to some things and ignore them. Some things remain on our mind board for some time, then we forget them. Some things get preserved in our subconscious in the form of memories. But the things that we follow, we start following, they affect our lives. They gradually become ingrained in our habits and eventually become a part of our personality by getting involved in our nature. Therefore, if you want to bring a positive change in your life, don't just listen to the good things. Follow them too. 23. Angry Man Act. While traveling, Buddha reached a village. Their crowd of people gathered to listen to his discourse. In discourse, Buddha was teaching people about tolerance and forgiveness. He said, "Anger is fire, which not only burn others but will also burn oneself to ashes. So renounce anger and be forgiving." An angry person was also sitting among those listening to discourse. Hearing those words, he stood up and said in hoarse voice, "I have never seen such a hypocritical beggar. For your selfishness, you are spreading misleading things in village. Are you not ashamed?" Buddha heard him but didn't react. He was as calm as he was before. Seeing this, that person's anger increased and he went away after spitting on face of Buddha. Still, Buddha remained calm. He finished his discourse. Later, along with his disciple, started to walk toward another village. After coming home, that angry person kept thinking about Buddha for a long time. As his anger started to subside, he started to repenting, thinking about what he said and did to Buddha. He immediately went back to place where Buddha was giving his discourse, but he got news of his departure. All night man kept cursing himself. Next day, he went to neighboring village, looking for Buddha. There he found that Buddha was giving discourse to people of that village. Seeing Buddha, he went to him and grabbed his feet weeping and started apologizing to him. Buddha looked at him in amazement and asked, "Who are you? Why are you apologizing? Get up." Man replied, "You don't recognize me? I am same person who misbehaved with you yesterday. What I did was wrong. I have come to ask for your forgiveness." Buddha calmly said, "Brother, yesterday you are talking about has passed. I have moved on, leaving all the incidents and things of that yesterday. Now I am present. Why are you staying in yesterday? You have repented of what you did yesterday. Your heart has been purified. Now leave those things there and come in present and improve your present by doing good deeds. Why to destroy your present by remembering the past?" Hearing those words of Buddha, tears started flowing from that person's eyes. While bowing down to him, he said, "From now, I will renounce anger and incorporate love and compassion into my life. I will make my life better by my action, so that there is no remorse for anything in life." 24. Monk meditation and disturbance. Once a monk lived in monastery with other monks. One day he decided to meditate alone away from his monastery. There was a lake nearby where not many people would visit. He decided to go to that lake to meditate. When he reached lake, there was no one else. He took a boat out to the middle of lake. When reached in middle, moors it there. There he sat with his eyes closed and began his meditation. After a few hours of undisturbed silence, he suddenly felt a bump of another boat colliding with his boat. Monk got disturbed, but still he kept his eyes closed. Again he felt bump. With his eyes closed, he sensed his anger rising, but still he kept his eyes closed and stayed silent. After a while, again he felt bump, and by this time he was ready to scream at the boatman who dared to disturb his meditation. When he couldn't control anymore, he opened his eyes and looked toward another boat to scream, but to his surprise, when he opened his eyes, he saw that it was an empty boat that had probably got untethered and floated to the middle of lake. As soon as Monk saw this, at that moment he achieved self-realization and understood that anger was within him, and it merely needed the bump of an external object to provoke it out of him. From then on, whenever Monk would come across someone who irritates him or try to provoke him to anger, he would remind himself, "Other person is merely an empty boat. The anger is within me." 25. Where is mind? Bodhidharma. Question to Emperor. When Bodhidharma went to China, then Chinese emperor came to know about him. He went to see him. Emperor said, "My mind is very uneasy, very disturbed. You are a great sage. Please tell me what I should do to put my mind at peace." Bodhidharma said, "You don't have to do anything. Just bring your mind to me." Emperor couldn't understand, asked, "What do you mean?" Bodhidharma said, "Come in morning at 4 o'clock when no one else is around, and don't forget to bring your mind with you." Emperor went back. Whole night he was thinking about what Bodhidharma said to him and couldn't sleep. At times he thought, "I should not go. He seemed like a mad man. What does even he meant by Don't forget to bring your mind. Still at 4 o'clock in morning, Emperor got up thinking, I don't understand what he meant, but still, I must go and see what can happen. So Emperor reached. Bodhidharma was sitting and seeing Emperor. He asked, So you have come. Where is your mind? Have you bought it or not? Emperor replied, You talk nonsense. When I am here, then my mind is also here. It is not something that I can leave behind or forget to bring. My mind is within me. Bodhidharma said, Okay, so first thing is decided that your mind is within you. Now close your eyes and find out where it is, and if you find out where it is, indicate me immediately. I will put it at peace. Emperor closed his eyes and tried, looked and looked. More he looked more. He realized that there is no mind. It is just an activity. It is not something that he could pinpoint at. If it is not something, so nothing can be done about it. Moment he realized that is not something, then absurdity of his quest became exposed to himself. He understood that if mind is just an activity, then don't do it. He opened his eyes and bowed down to Bodhidharma and said, There is no mind to be found. Bodhidharma said, Then I have put it at peace. 26. Young Monk and Amrapali. In Vaishali lived a famous courtesan, Amrapali. She was very beautiful and was declared Nagarvadhu of Vaishali. In those times, the most beautiful woman of any city will not be allowed to get married to any one person. So the most beautiful woman had to become Nagarvadhu, the wife of the whole town. One day, she was standing on her terrace and saw a young Buddhist monk who had nothing, just a begging bowl, but had tremendous presence, awareness, and grace. Moment she saw him, she rushed down to him and said, Please, accept my food. After offering him food, Amrapali said, After 3 days, rainy season is going to begin, and I invite you to stay in my house for 4 months. Buddhist monks don't move for 4 months when it is the rainy season. Those are the 4 months they stay in one place. For 8 months they continuously move. They can't stay more than 3 days in one place. Young monk replied, I will ask my master. If he allows me, I will come. After saying this, he left. Before young monk could reach assembly, monks who saw this rushed to Buddha and said, Young monk has to be stopped. Amrapali has invited him to his house to live for 4 months. And a monk staying 4 months in a prostitute's house. It's not right. Buddha said to them, Keep quiet. Let him come. Young monk came, touched Buddha's feet, and told him the whole story. A woman has invited me to her house. She is a courtesan. She asked me to stay for 4 months in her house. Every monk will be staying somewhere in somebody's house for 4 months. I have told her that I ask my master, so I am here. I will do whatever you say. Buddha looked into his eyes and said, You can stay. It was a shock. Thousands of monks who were there couldn't believe that Buddha has allowed a monk to stay in a prostitute's house. After 3 days, young man left to stay with Amrapali, and other monks started gossiping. Buddha said to them, You should keep silent. 4 months will pass, and I trust my monk. I have looked into his eyes. There was no desire. If I had said no, he would not have felt anything. I said yes. He simply went. Why are you all getting so agitated and worried? If a monk's meditation is deep, then he will change Amrapali, and if his meditation is not deep, then Amrapali may change him. It is now a question between meditation and physical attraction. Just wait for 4 months. Despite this, disciples thought, Buddha is trusting too much. That man is too young and Amrapali is too beautiful. He is taking an unnecessary risk. After 4 months, young man came and touched Buddha's feet. Following him came Amrapali. She touched Buddha's feet and said, I tried my best to seduce this young monk, but it was all useless. Instead, He convinced me by awareness that real life is at your feet. I want to give all my possessions to the commune of your monks. Later, Amrapali became one of the enlightened women among Buddha's disciples. 27. Buddha condition for woman. Once a woman's only little child died. She got almost insane and went around with her child body asking people, "Is there any physician anywhere who can make my child alive again? Please tell me." It happened that Buddha was coming to town, one of villagers said to her. "I don't know any physician, but Buddha is coming to our village. Buddha is an enlightened being. It's a great chance. You take your child to Buddha and ask him to help you." So, she went to Buddha and put dead body of her child at Buddha's feet and said, "Please call him back to life. You know all secrets of life. You have attained enlightenment. Can't you do a small miracle for a poor woman?" Buddha replied, "I will do it, but there is one condition." Woman said, "I will fulfill any condition to bring my child back to life." Buddha said, "The condition is, go around and find a house where nobody has ever died in family, and when you find it, bring a few mustard seeds from that house." Village was cultivating mustard seeds, so Buddha just asked he to go around village and look. Woman went to first house and told them everything and asked for seeds. People from that house said, "A few mustard seeds. We can bring back carts full of mustard seeds if Buddha can bring back your son to life with help of those seeds. But our mustard seeds will not be of any help because we have been living here for ages, not just one, but many have died in our family." Woman went to another house, but even there she got similar answer, and as she went on looking for house with no death. She visited each and every house of that village. She even went to nearby villages, and after some days came back to Buddha empty-handed. Buddha asked, "Where are mustard seeds?" Woman smiled and said, "You tricked me. There is no family, not in this village, nor in the whole world where nobody has died. Everybody who is born is going to die. I understand now. I don't want my son to brought back to life again. Please initiate me into the art of meditation so that I can go into the land, the space of immortality, where birth and death have never happened." Buddha said, "You understood the point." At that time, Buddha initiated that woman and she became one of the enlightened ones among Buddha's disciples. 28. 2 words. Rule at monastery. A complaining mind. Once they're used to a monastery where rules were very strict. One rule was not to speak even a word. All monks in monastery adhered to this rule. Everyone who joined monastery had taken up strict vow of silence. Though there was a rule to not speak a word, once monk completed 1 year of vow of silence, he was given a chance to speak, but even at that time monk was allowed to speak only 2 words. In monastery, a young man joined. When his first year ended, head monk called him and said, "Your first years of silence is complete. Now you are allowed to speak, but remember that you can speak only 2 words." Young monk thought for a while and finally spoke, "Bed, hard." Head monk understood. Young man left. Young man continued to live in monastery. Another year passed. Again, after completion of next years, head monk again called that young monk and said, "So, what do you have to say this time?" Young monk said, "Food stinks." Young man still continued to live in that monastery. Again, another year passed. Again, head monk asked, "What are your 2 words this time?" "I quit," exclaimed young monk. Head monk thought and said, "Well, I can see why." Head monk of the monastery said, "Good. Anyway, all you have been doing these 3 years was nothing but complaining." Moral: if you complain, you will never be able to see finish line and will quit even before you get there. Therefore, if one want to accomplish anything, then one have to stop complaining and start working towards self-improvement. The feeling of deep gratitude can arise Only when we become aware of what existence is giving to us. Our attitude towards life is our own choice. Whether we choose gratitude or complaint, that is exactly what life will reflect back to us. 29. Zen Master Response to Man. Once a Zen monk Bokuju was passing through a street in village. Suddenly, a man came up and struck him with a stick. Bokuju fell down, and with him that stick also fell there. He got up and picked up that stick. Man who had hit him and was running away. When Bokuju saw that, he took that stick and started running after him. He ran after him, calling, "Wait, take your stick with you." Bokuju followed after that man, and at last was able to give him that stick back. But because of all shouting and commotion, crowd gathered to see that was happening. When crowd got to know what happened, one person from crowd came to Bokuju and said, "That man struck you hard and you have no said anything. Why?" Bokuju said, "A fact is a fact. He had hit, that's all. He was the hitter and I was hit. It is just as if I am passing under a tree or sitting under a tree and a branch falls down. What will I do then? What can I do?" Man said, "But a branch is a branch, this is a man. We cannot say anything to branch fell from tree. We cannot punish it because tree had no mind but this." Bokuju said, "To me this man is also just a tree, and if I cannot say anything to tree, why should I bother to say anything to this man? What happened had already happened. I am not going to interpret it. Why get worried about it now? It is finished. Over." This is mind of sage, not choosing, not asking, not saying this should be and this should not be. Whatsoever happens, he accepts it in its totality. This acceptance gives him freedom, capacity to see. 30. Angel's Gift of Miracle to Saint, the Holy Shadow. Once lived a saint so good that angels came to earth. Angels saw that Saint Whole Day could be summed up by two words. He gave, he forgave, yet these words never passed his lips. These words were expressed in his smile, his kindness, forbearance, and charity. Angel went back and told God about Saint and said, "Lord, grant him gift of miracles." God replied, "Ask what it is that he wishes." Angels came back to earth. They came to Saint and said, "We are here to grant you a gift of miracles. Would you like to have touch of your hands to heal the sick?" Saint answered, "No, let God do that." Then angels asked, "Would you like to convert guilty souls and bring back their heart to right path?" Saint replied, "No, that's angels' mission. It is not for me to convert." Then angels asked, "Would you like to become a model of patience, attracting men by luster of your virtues and thus glorifying God?" Saint replied, "No. If men get attracted to me, then they would become estranged from God." "What is it that you desire then?" asked angels. Saint asked, "What can I wish for? That God gives me his grace. With that would I not have everything?" This time angels said, "You must ask for a miracle, or one will be forced upon you." "Very well, then. I want that I may do a great deal of good without ever knowing it," said Saint. Angels were perplexed. They discussed and resolved upon following plan. Every time the saint's shadow fell behind him or to either side so that he could not see it, it would have the power to cure disease, soothe pain, and comfort sorrow. After this, when the saint walked along, his shadow, thrown on the ground on either side or behind him, made arid paths green, caused withered plants to bloom, gave clear water to dried-up brooks, fresh color to pale children, and joy to unhappy men and women. The saint simply went about his daily life diffusing virtue as the stars diffuse light and the flowers scent without being aware of it. The people, respecting his humility, followed him silently, never speaking to him about his miracles. Soon they even forgot his name and called him the Holy Shadow. Meaning of this, That finally you have to sacrifice your center so you cannot think in terms of the ego again. You cannot utter I to annihilate yourself utterly, to erase yourself utterly. Nothing belongs to you. On the contrary, you belong to God. You become a holy shadow. 31. 5 Monk's Journey. Distractions and Destination. Once a lama who was working in a faraway valley wrote a letter to chief of monastery. In letter he said, "Send one more lama, we need him here." Chief called all his disciples and read that letter in front of them. Then he said, "I would like to send 5 of you." One lama asked, "But why 5 when he asked only for 1?" Chief replied, "You will know later. I will send 5 and then 2. It's not certain that 1 will reach because way is long and distractions are 1,001. Disciples laughed as they thought it was stupid to send 5 when asked for 1, but Chief was insistent and selected 5 and sent them. Next morning, their journey started. When they were passing by a village, a messenger came running to them and said, "Our priest has died and we need a priest. Salary is good." Village looked rich and prosperous, so one of them said, "I would like to stay here because that is to Buddha's work. I am going to stay here. You 4 will be enough as only 1 is needed." 1 dropped. Next day, as they were passing by outskirt of kingdom, King, who was passing by them on horse, looked at them and stopped. One young monk looked healthy and radiant. He said to him, "Wait, I am looking for a young man for my daughter to get married. I have been looking for a groom and you seem to be exactly right. Are you ready? I have only 1 daughter and after marriage my whole kingdom will be yours." Young monk found this opportunity as good to settle and agreed to King's request and said goodbye to his friends and left. Now, 3 monks who were left became aware that Chief was right. Way is long and there are 1,001 distraction. 3 decided that they will be careful and not be distracted by any such distractions. Deep down they were jealous. 3rd night they lost their way. At night they could see only 1 light lamp. They went in that direction and somehow reached there. When they knocked on door, a young woman came out. She greeted and welcomed them and said, "You are God's send because I was alone and waiting for my mother-father to return, but they are not back. I was afraid to be alone. Please stay with me until my parents return." Next morning they had to leave, but one of them had fallen in love with that young woman and said, "Her parents haven't returned yet. I can't go until her parents are back." Other 2 tried to talk him out of it, but he refused to listen. 2 monks who were left carried on with their journey. Next morning, when they were passing by village, they got surrounded by crowd because village was atheistic and didn't believe in Buddha. They challenged them to prove what Buddha says is true. One of the great scholar from village arrived and challenged them with his knowledge. One of them accepted the challenge. Other one asked, "What are you doing? Who knows how long it will take? We have to reach valley." Monk replied, "Even if my whole life is wasted, I will stay here and take challenge. I am devote of Buddha, and this man has challenged his philosophies. I will convert this village. You can go. In fact, only 1 is needed." It was not just a challenge to Buddha, but it was challenge to Monk's ego, so he stayed there. That's how at last only 1 monk was able to reach its destination valley. 32. Students' Work of Art, Painting Competition. Once a boy named Raman was studying art under guidance of a great master. Master taught Raman how to draw and paint, mixing colors and other various techniques. Raman was a quick learner. His master was proud of him. Once a competition was announced for budding painters. Artists were asked to send their paintings. Raman Master asked him to make a painting for competition. Master asked, "What would you like to paint for competition?" Raman replied, "A mountain." Because art school was at foot of a mountain, Both Master and Raman went out and sat at distance from Mountain. Raman set up everything and then gazed at Mountain and started painting. After a while, Master looked at Raman's sketch and asked him to pay attention to proportion of scenery. Raman did as told. Then Master asked, "Do you think this is right shade?" Raman then changed shade. Later, Master suggested various other changes, and this went on for hours. Raman didn't lose patience and wanted to put in his best effort. Master then told Raman to continue working as he had to step out for some work and said, "I will be back in an hour or two. Finish work by time I return." Raman nodded and continued to work on painting. Master was back after few hours. Until then, Raman had already finished his painting. When Master looked at painting, he said, "Wow, this is the most beautiful painting you have ever made." Then Master looked at Raman and frowned and said, "This looks so different from what you were painting when you began. I had to correct you so many times." Raman smiled and said, "Master, in morning I was painting to please you, but after you left me alone, I started to paint to please myself." 33. Buddha sleeping. Disciple question. Just nearby, in the Ajanta caves, in the last cave, there is a sculpture of Gautam Buddha sleeping. That pose has become known as the lion's pose because the lion also sleeps on its side without moving. When Gautam Buddha was alive, he used to sleep in same posture, whole night. He wouldn't move from side to side or even an inch from his sleeping position. One of Gautam Buddha's disciple named Ananda was very much troubled because of this. Every night he could see that Buddha was still. Sometimes, in middle of night, he would wake up and would see that Buddha was still in same position, absolutely still, just as he had always been. One night he couldn't resist his curiosity and went to Buddha while he was sleeping. He woke him up and said, "I know it's not good to disturb you at night because whole day you have been walking and teaching, but I couldn't wait for morning to ask you this. For 20 years I have been watching you. I have waited for long, but no, I have to ask to you about it anyway. Please tell me, how do you manage to remain in same posture that you go to sleep in same posture for whole night? Do you sleep, or do you simply go on keeping that posture? Because I have to move continuously. I can't sleep still whole night." Gautam Buddha said, "I have found the right posture. Now there is no need to change it, and I am awake as anyone even when my body is asleep. I have found the right posture for body, but you are still searching for it. It is not simply a question of tossing and turning the body. It is because your mind is tossing and turning. I have gone beyond. There is no mind when I go to sleep. The body simply lies down like a corpse. Have you even seen any corpse changing its posture?" Learning. It is your mind. Once your mind is at rest, once it disappears, your body can remain asleep, but your inner eye, your inner sensitivity, your awareness can remain burning like a small flame, not only watching your body, but also watching the silent mind and the stillness surrounding you. The enlightened man cannot sleep in the same way that the unenlightened one sleeps. When the unenlightened man sleeps, he is simply unconscious, whereas the enlightened man sleeps, but he is not unconscious. 34. King, invitation, and doubts. Once there was king who used to go on round of his kingdom in disguise. Every night he would go to see whether things were all right or there was some trouble about which he didn't know. He saw a very beautiful and silent man standing under a tree. Whatever time of night he went, that naked man was always standing there silently, just like a statue. King got curious, and finally one day he asked, "What are you guarding? I can't see anything." Young man laughed. "I am guarding myself. I don't have anything else. Guarding itself, being alert and aware is greatest treasure. You have much, but you don't have the guard." King was puzzled but was intrigued by that man. Slowly, a great friendship arose. Naked Monk never asked kings about his identity. One day King said, "I've been asking you so many questions, but you never even asked me who you are." Young man said, "If you knew who you were, then you wouldn't been asking me many questions. I simply accept whoever you are. I never asked the trees, I never asked the animals, the birds, I never asked the stars. Why should I ask you? I am perfectly at ease with you and with everything. Nothing can be predicted. Everything goes on moving into more and more mysteries, and I am perfectly at ease. Whatever is happening is a joy. Each moment is so sweet and so fragrant I cannot ask for more. I don't know any other way to relate with existence." King replied, "But I have fallen in so much love with you that I wait whole day for night to come and I go on my round. I'm always afraid someday you may not be here. I want you to be closer to me. Can I invite you to my palace? I will arrange everything as you want." Without even a single moment of hesitation, man said, "This is good idea. I can just go with you right now. I don't have anything to carry with me. No arrangements have to be made." King was shocked, as he was expecting young man to refuse that offer because he looked like he has renounced the world. Doubt arose in King's mind that perhaps he has been befooled and this man is not saint and he has only been pretending and been waiting for this moment. Now, it was difficult for King to take invitation back. Sadly, he took man to palace and gave him best place in palace to stay, and also best services were provided. King was still hoping that young man would refuse, but young man said, "Great, this is the right place." King couldn't sleep at whole night. From next day, young man was eating luxurious food, was no longer naked, he was using costliest robes. He was not looking worried about woman as most beautiful women from palace were serving him. Young man was quite at ease, as if nothing had happened, but it was too much for King. It was becoming a wound in King's heart, thinking that he had really been befooled and cheated. King started to think of ways to get rid of young man. King went to young man and said, "I have been wanting to ask you a question for some time." Young man replied, "I know, not from some time, but from the moment I accepted your invitation." King was shocked and said, "What do you mean?" Young man replied, "I know you were expecting me to reject your offer. If I had refused, then you would have respected me, touched my feet, but I don't reject anything. My acceptance is total, whether it's palace or place under tree. Now you can ask me question, although I already know it." King said, "Then answer me. All I want to know is, what is difference between you and me?" Young man laughed and said, "I will answer, but not here because you will not understand it. We will go in morning and at the right place, at the right moment, I will answer." Next morning they both went on horses for morning ride. They rode long way, but young man still hadn't talked about answer. Finally King said, "Now this river is the boundary of my empire. Beyond the river I cannot go. That belongs to someone with whom we have been enemies for centuries. We have ridden miles, and now it is time enough. It is getting hot, the middle of the day." Young man replied, "Yes, my answer is, this is your robe, this is your horse." Then getting off his horse, young man took off the robe and said, "I am going to the other side of the river because I don't have any enemies. This robe was never mine, and this horse was never mine. Just one small question. Are you coming with me or not?" King said, "How can I come with you? I have to look after kingdom. My whole life's work, struggle, fight, ambition is behind me in the kingdom." Young man replied, "That's difference. I can go. I don't have anything in palace. I don't have anything to lose. Nothing belongs to me. As long as it was available, I enjoyed suchness of it. Now I will enjoy wild tree, river, sun." King realized that he was mistaken. Young man was not deceiving him and was man to realization. King got on his knees and said, "I beg your pardon. I touch your feet. Don't go. Otherwise, I will never be able to forgive myself." Young man smiled and said, "To me there is no problem. I can come back, but you will still start doubting, so it is better that you let me go. I will be just standing by the other side of the bank under that beautiful tree. Whenever you want to come, you can come at least to the other shore and see me. I have no problem in coming back, but I'm not coming back because I don't want to disturb your nights and days and create tensions and worries." The more he became reluctant, the more the king started feeling sorry and sad, guilty about what he had done. Young monk said, "You could not understand me because you don't understand the experience of suchness. Wherever you are in a deep love relationship with everything that is. You don't have to change anybody. You don't have to change anything. You don't have to change yourself. Everything is as it should be. It is the most perfect world." 35. How long will it take to find Zen? Once a very curious young man wanted to learn Zen. After joining for some time, student approached his master and asked, "If I work hard, how long will it take me to find Zen?" Master thought for a while and replied, "Maybe in 10 years. Listening to this, curious student asked his master, "What if I work very, very hard and learn really fast? How long will it take then?" "I think 20 years, replied master. "But what if I work really, really hard? I will work day and night, every minute, every second. How long then?" "It will take 30 years, master replied to young man. Disappointed and sad, student asked his master, "I don't understand. Every time I say I will work harder, you say it will take longer time to find Zen. Why do you say so?" Master replied, "It's because when you have one eye on the goal, then you only have one eye on the path." 36. Master and Traveler. In old times, it was customary for monks who was traveling and seeking for lodge to stay was to engage himself in Dharma combat with head monk at Zen monastery. If he won battle, then he could stay, else he would have to seek quarters elsewhere. Once a traveling monk stopped at a monastery. Master at monastery assigned his attendant to engage in silent debate combat with traveling monk. By chance, attendant who was to combat with wayfarer had only one eye. They both were sent for combat. Soon the wayfarer returned to master saying, "Your man is too good. I must journey on." Wayfarer then told master about the combat. He said, "I held up one finger to symbolize Buddha, but he held up 2 fingers for Buddha and Dharma. So I held up 3 fingers for Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, but then he made a fist to indicate that they were all one. So I ran to indicate that I am no match for him." After saying this, wayfarer left. When the traveler left, master's attendant arrived. He was angry and out of breath. He demanded to his master, "Where is that rascal?" He continued, "Master, first he insulted me by holding up one finger to indicate I had only one eye. Still being polite, I held up 2 fingers to indicate that he was blessed with 2 eyes, but still that traveler kept going on and held up 3 fingers to indicate that together there were only 3 eyes among them. So I wanted to hit him hard and made a fist, but he ran off. Where is he hiding?" 37. 4 monks. Meditation. 4 monks decided to meditate silently without speaking for a few days. By nightfall on the first day, candle began to flicker and then blown out. First monk said, "Oh no, candle is out." Second monk responded, "Aren't we supposed not to talk?" Listening to this, third monk questioned them, "Why did you 2 broke silence?" Fourth monk laughed at them, saying, "Ha ha, I am only one who didn't speak." 38. Neither good nor bad. Once Zen master Hakuin lived on outskirts of a village in Japan. He was very famous and has great reputation. Whole village respected him. Whenever he would go to village for alms, people would greet and welcome him and would give him many things. But one day, everything changed. A young unmarried girl in village became pregnant and gave birth to child. When her family asked about child's father, she said that it was Hakuin's child. Girl's father raged. He gathered people in town and walked to Hakuin's place. It didn't take long for people to change. Those people who once respected him now attacked Hakuin's hut and started abusing him. They set Hakuin's hut on fire. Hakuin came out and asked, "What's matter?" People shouted, "This child is yours. Take him with you." Hakuin said, "Is it so? Is this child mine?" Just then, child started crying, so he started singing song to calm child. Hakuin didn't argue or said anything. People left child with him. Girl also left. Later, he went to beg at his usual time with child, but today every door he stood in front of was slammed shut. While he walked by village roads, crowd of people started teasing him, abusing him, and threw stones at him. Hakuin reached house of girl whose child it was. He said, "Don't give food for me, but at least give some milk for this child. I may be at fault, but what's fault of this child?" Child was crying. Listening to child crying became unbearable for girl, and she fell at feet of her father and said, "Forgive me, I lied. I gave name of Hakuin because I wanted to save real father of child, so I thought to using Hakuin's name." Father realized what great mistake he did. He ran out of house and fell at feet of Hakuin and tried to take baby. Hakuin asked, "What's matter?" Girl's father said, "Forgive me. There has been mistake. This child is not yours." Hakuin replied, "Is this so? Is the child not mine?" Hakuin gave child to girl's father and started to leave. Just then people from crowd said, "You are mad. Why didn't you deny it this morning?" Hakuin replied, "What difference would it have made? The child must belong to somebody. You had already burnt one hut. You would have just burnt one more. You had enjoyed defaming one person. You would have enjoyed defaming one more." People said, "Child wasn't your, yet everyone condemned you, insulted you, humiliated you. Still you didn't said anything. Why?" Hakuin replied, "If I had been concerned with your condemnation, I would have been concerned about your respect also. I do as I feel right. You do whatever you feel to be right. Until yesterday you felt it right to respect me, so you did. Today you felt it right not to respect me, so you didn't. But I'm not concerned with either your respect or your disrespect." People said, "Your good reputation was lost. Everyone thought you were a bad person." He replied, "I am neither bad nor good. I'm simply myself. I have dropped this idea of good and bad. I have dropped all concern in becoming good. I dropped the very idea. I became absolutely indifferent." 39. One's Nature and Enlightenment. Story 1. Angry Man abuses Buddha. Once somebody came and started insulting and abusing Buddha. Buddha listened silently. When man walked away, one of disciples asked Buddha, "Why did you remain silent?" Buddha said, "Once I was passing through a forest and a branch of a tree fell on me. What do you think? Should I beat that branch of the tree because it hurt me? It wounded me." Disciple replied, "There is no question of beating the branch. It had no desire to hurt you. It had no desire to fall on you. It was just a natural accident that you happened to be under the tree when the branch fell." Buddha said, "If somebody insults me, that is also the same. I simply happened to be there, and that man was full of anger. If I had not been there, he would have been angry with somebody else. It was his nature. He was following his nature. I followed my nature." Story 2. Old Man's Age, 4 year. Once there was great king who had come to see Buddha. He was sitting by Buddha's side talking to him. Just then an old man came, bowed down, and touched Buddha's feet. Buddha asked old man, "How old are you?" Old man replied, just 4 years old. King couldn't believe his ears and thought to himself, "Old man looks almost 80, if not more, and yet he is saying that he is 4 years old. Maybe I had mistaken in listening." So King said, "Pardon me, sir, can you please repeat it again? How old are you?" Old man again said, "4 years old." Buddha understood King's confusion and said, "You don't know the way we count life. It is 4 years ago that he became a sannyasi, that he was initiated into the eternal, that he was taken into the timeless. It is only 4 years ago that he crossed from this shore and reached to the other shore. He has lived for 80 years, but those years are not worth counting." 40. Anger or love? Your choice. Once there was great Zen master, Rinzai. He used to meet people at his place where he used to meet people. One day a man came to him. Man was not in good mood, and because of this, when he entered master's room, he pushed and slammed door very hard. He removed his shoes and threw them away, and as soon as he lifted his foot to enter, just then Rinzai said, "Wait, don't enter." Man asked, "Why?" Rinzai replied, "First go and ask for forgiveness from door and from your shoes." Man said, "What are you talking about? I heard that these Zen people are mad. I didn't believe, but now it seems true." "What nonsense you are talking about? Why should I ask forgiveness from door and shoes? It looks so embarrassing." Rinzai replied, "You get out, right now, and never come again. If you can be angry at shoes, then why can't you ask for forgiveness? When you were angry, you never thought it was so foolish to be angry with shoes. If you can relate with anger, then why no with love? When you slammed door with such anger you related to door, you behaved wrongly, immorally. That door has not done anything to you. Relationship is relationship. Anger is a relationship. If you can't apologize, then you don't come in." Under impact of Rinzai's silence, people sitting there, and that presence of master like a flash, man understood. He understood the logic of it, and it was, if you can be angry, then why can't you be loving? Man went and touched door, and tears started to flow from his eyes. He could not hold back his tears. Then he bowed down to his own shoes. A great change happened in him. That moment he turned and came towards Rinzai. Rinzai took him in his arms and embraces him. Moral: anger and love have no limits. It's you, choice what you chose to follow. Watch your thoughts, they become words. Watch your words, they become actions. Watch your actions, they become habits. Watch your habits, they become character. Watch your character, it become destiny. 41. Young Man Enlightenment Story. Once a young man belonging to a very rich and aristocratic family came to Zen Master. Young man told Master that he had known everything and indulged in every desire, but then he got fed up with everything, fed up with women, wine, money. He said to Master, "Now I am fed up with world. I don't understand what to do anymore. Is there some way that I can know myself, who I am?" Before Master could reply, young man said, "I want to tell you that I am indecisive and cannot continue anything for a long time. I cannot persist in anything." Master said, "Then it will be very difficult because long effort will be needed to undo all that you have done in past. But let me ask you one question. Have you ever been interested in something so deeply that you were absorbed completely?" Young man thought and said, "Yes, there is one thing I am very much interested in, and that is chess. That's only thing saving me. Everything else has fallen away. Only chess is still with me." Listening to this, Master smiled and said, "Then something can be done." Master called one monk who had been mediating for 12 years in monastery. He asked attendee to bring one chessboard. Monk was little acquainted with chess rules, but being in meditation for 12 years, he forgot almost all about worldly things. Master said to Monk, "Listen, This is going to be a dangerous game. If you are defeated by this young man, I will cut off your head with sword." Young man became little uneasy. Just then Master turned to him and said, "You said that you like chess. You get absorbed in chess. Now play with all you got because it's matter of life and death. If you are defeated, I will cut off your head." For a moment, young man thought to escape, but then if he ran away at that point, it would look dishonorable. So he agreed to play. Game started. Young man started trembling. Now, it was not just a game, but his life depended on his win. He couldn't think. Monk, who was sitting in front of him, looked serene and calm. Monk was playing calmly. With every step, death was coming nearer for young man. Young man thought, well, death is certain. After thinking this, with every passing minute, thoughts disappeared. Young man forgot about death and life. He became just a part of game, totally immersed in it. Young man started playing beautifully. In beginning, Monk was winning, but within minutes of young man changed whole play and Monk started losing. At that time, only the moment existed, only present. Young man stopped trembling. His mind was no more there. Young man played so beautifully that his victory was certain. Then suddenly, he looked at Monk. He thought, 12 years of meditation. This monk had become like a flower. 12 years of austerity. He had become so pure. No desire, no thought, no goal, no purpose existed for him. He is so innocent. Young man started to feel compassion for him. Moment he started feeling compassion for Monk. Something absolutely unknown started filling his heart. He felt blissful. Young man thought to himself, if today I get defeated and killed, there is nothing disturbed. I am not worth nothing, but if this monk get killed, then something beautiful will be destroyed. He started making wrong moves knowingly to make Monk win. Just at that moment, Master upturned the table and started laughing. Master said, "Nobody is going to be defeated here. You both have won." Monk was already in heaven. No need to cut off his head. He was not troubled at all when his master said that his head would be cut off. Is he lost? Then Master said to young man, "You have won. Your victory is greater than this monk's. Now I will initiate. You can be here and soon will be enlightened." Young man said, "Please tell me what happened. I feel like I am not same young man who came to you few hours ago. That man is already dead. You have done a miracle." Master said, "Because death was so imminent, you couldn't think. Thoughts stopped. Death was so close by, thinking was impossible. But then death was so near, there was no gap between you and death, and thoughts need space to move. There was no space, so thinking stopped. Meditation happened spontaneously. But that was not enough, because that type of meditation which happens because of emergency will be lost. When the emergency is gone, that meditation will be lost. So I couldn't throw the board at that moment. I had to wait. If meditation really happens, whatsoever the cause, compassion has to follow. Compassion is the flowering of meditation. If compassion is not coming, your meditation is somewhere wrong. Then I looked at your face. You were filled with bliss and your eyes became Buddha-like. When you thought that it is better to sacrifice myself than this monk. This monk is more valuable than me. Then I saw in your eyes the compassion arising, and then you started to make wrong movements just to be defeated so that you would be killed and this monk saved. At that moment, I had to throw the board. You had won. Now you can be here. I have taught you both meditation and compassion. Now follow this track and let them become spontaneous in you. Not situational, not depending on any emergency, but just a quality of your being. 42. King's reaction. Once a disciple is going to be given his last initiation by his master. Once he passes his last initiation, he would be declared enlightened. Disciple went to master and said, "I am ready. Please tell me what I have to do for my last initiation." Master said, "You have to go to King early morning. You have to be first visitor to King for the day, because King has a habit, whosoever comes to him first asks whatever, Kings will give. King is wise, takes care of his people so good that people forgot about it, and years had passed and nobody goes to King early morning to ask for anything. Remember, after waking up as sun rises, first thing King does is to go into his garden for walk, so be there." Disciple followed order. He didn't take any chance and was at King's garden at 3 o'clock early in morning, waiting for King. As sun was rising, Disciple saw that King came to garden. Disciple went to King and bowed down. King said, "Do you need anything? You can ask for anything and I will give it to you." Disciple came from poor family, and when King said that he can ask for anything, great desires possessed him. To be certain, Disciple asked again, "What do you mean by anything?" King replied, "I mean anything. You can ask for gold, palace, or even if you demand for my kingdom, I will give it to you." Poor Disciple couldn't think of just one thing. He thought that maybe asking for 10,000 rupees will do, but just then he thought, why only 10,000 gold coins? Why not 100,000 coins? Disciple mind constantly kept thinking of more and more things. After waiting for a while, King said, "It seems that you are not ready to ask. I will go for my morning walk. Meanwhile, you decide. When I return, whatsoever you ask will be given to you." For half an hour he went on and on about thinking. When King came, Disciple said, "Sir, if you are so willing to give, I ask for everything. All that you have, your kingdom, all your riches, your palaces, everything." Listening to this, King fell on his knees, started praying to God, tears rolling down from his eyes, of great joy, ecstasy. He was thanking God, saying, "I've been waiting for such a man. How long have I waited? Finally, you heard my prayers. Now he has come and I am free of all this nonsense. Thank you." When King was saying all these things to God, young Disciple was standing beside him and started to think, what is the matter? Why King is feeling so happy renouncing the kingdom? What am I getting into? If for 30 years he has been praying to leave this, then it's not worthwhile at all. I am getting into unnecessary trouble. Disciple fell on his knees, touched King's feet, and said, "Majesty, I am young man. I am fool. Please excuse me. I don't want anything. Your prayer to God had made me realize my mistake. Thank you. Please, I don't want anything. I want to go back to forest to my master." King tried to persuade him, asking him to stay for a while and look around, but Disciple still refused, saying, "I cannot stay here. Not even for a single moment, because my mind can betray me. An insight has happened. I am thankful to you." When young Disciple came back, he told whole story to his master. Master said, "Your initiation is over. Now nothing will ever make a slave of you. Now you are alert, conscious, free. You have passed. I am happy." 43. Man's Innocence. Once there was big monastery where lived 500 monks. They were all practicing path of self-remembering under their master. One day a man went to monastery to become disciple. Master accepted him as disciple, but because he was simple, uneducated man from village, Master gave him job of rice cleaning in kitchen. Monastery kitchen was big. Poor man used to wake up before sunrise and would go late into night doing his work of cleaning rice. He had no time left to attend sermons, prayers, or read scripture or listen to wise talks. All monks at monastery were great scholar and were known all over country. 20 years passed. Poor man continued just cleaning rice, doing nothing else. In all these years, he even forgot to count years, days, dates, and even became suspicious of his own name because for 20 years nobody had said his name or called him by his name. For whole 20 years he was doing only one small thing, cleaning rice for monastery kitchen. One day, Master of Monastery declared that his time to depart from the body has come. It was time for him to choose his successor. He said, "Anybody who thinks that he had succeeded in self-remembering should write on wall of my hut, insight which shows he had seen the truth." Some scholars wrote, but no one had signed. None of them had courage to sign his name out of fear that what if Master wouldn't like it? This went on for days. Daily Master would erase message saying, "Find out idiot who spoiled my wall." One day, Master erased message and said, "None of you has come to point of self-remembering. You all have been feeding your ego in name of self. I reminded you again and again, but having a big ego is joy. Now I will have to find person myself." In middle of night, Master went to man who had been cleaning rice for 20 years. For 20 years, Master had not seen him. Master woke him up, because in 20 years he had just seen him once for few seconds when he was initiated. Man asked Master, "Who are you? Why are you disturbing my sleep?" Master said, "I am your master. Have you forgotten? What's your name?" Man replied, "This is difficult. Work you have given me is such that it needs no name, no fame, no austerities. It is so simple that I have forgotten everything. I don't remember my name. A few name comes to my mind, but I cannot decide which one is mine. But I am grateful to you." He touched his master's feet for blessings. Seeing his master after so long, he thought maybe there was complaint with his work or something is wrong. He said, "Please don't change my job. I have forgotten everything, but I have also achieved everything. I know peace that I had never dreamed of, a silence that no words can express. I have known such moments of ecstasy that even if I had died here right now, I wouldn't have any complaint that life has not been fair to me. It has given me more than I was worthy of. Please don't change my job. I am doing it perfectly well. Has somebody complained about my work?" Master smiled and said, "No, nobody has complained. But still your job has to be changed because I'm choosing you as my successor." Man hesitantly replied, "But I am only a rice cleaner. I don't know anything about being master or a disciple. Please forgive me, but I can't be your successor. I cannot handle such big job." Master still insisted, "You have achieved which others have been trying to achieve but have failed. You have achieved it because you are not trying. You were simply doing your work. Slowly, slowly. There was no need for thinking, emotions, anger, fight, compassion, ambition. Your ego died, and with ego, your name died. You are not born with a name. It is the ego that is given a name. That is the beginning of the ego. With the death of the ego, you even forgot your own master because it was the ego that brought you to me. You are absolutely right person to take my robe, hat, and sword, which I always carry with me and was given to me by my master. But remember one thing. Take them and escape from this monastery as far as you can, because if you stay here, your life will be in danger. All these egoists will kill you. You are so simple and you have become so innocent that if they ask you for the robe, the sword, the cap, you will give them. So simply take them and go as far as you can into mountain. Soon people will start arriving to you, just as bees start finding their way toward flowers when flower blossom. Because you have blossomed. You need not to bother about disciples. You simply remain silently in faraway place. People will come to you." Man replied, But, I have received no teaching and I don't know what to teach them." Master said, "Just teach them to do small things, silently, peacefully, without any ambition, without any motivation to gain something in this world or in the other world, so that you can become innocent like a child." 44. Old Zen master and archer. Once a man was perfect in archery. He went to Emperor of China and said that he wants to be recognized as greatest and best archer in China, and for that he was ready for any challenge. Emperor said, "Have you heard about an old archer who lives deep in mountains?" Man replied, "I haven't, but I am ready to contest." King laughed and said, "You should go and meet him. If he recognizes you, I will recognize you because I don't know archery. Bring in recognition from him and I will accept it without any further question." Man traveled to high mountains to meet him. There he has found a very old man whose back was bent, couldn't stand straight. Man asked him, "Are you an archer?" Old man replied, "I used to be, but half a century has passed. When I became a perfect archer according to my master, I had to throw away my bows and arrows. King sent me information that he was going to send somebody. You think you are perfect? Have you come for my recognition?" Man replied, "Yes." Old man then said, "Then why are you carrying bow and arrows?" Man replied, "Strange. I carry them because that's what my mastery is." Old man laughed and brought him out of his cottage to a mountain cliff. Old man was so old and cliff went so deep, thousands of feet into valley. It was so deep that if you miss a single step, you were gone. Just then, old man walked on very edge of cliff, half of his feet hanging off cliff and half on cliff. Young man couldn't believe his eyes. Old man said, "Now you also come. There is enough space for one more." Man tried just 2 steps and sat down, trembling, seeing the depth of valley. Seeing this, old man laughed and said, "What kind of archer you are? How many birds can you kill with a single arrow?" Man replied, "Of course, 1." Old man smiled and said, "It's a sheer wastage of 1 arrow to kill just 1 bird. You have to learn under a Zen master. My master never allowed anybody the certificate unless he was able with 1 arrow to bring down the whole flock." Man questioned, "How many can you kill?" Old man replied, "You say the number." Just then, a flock of birds flew over mountain. Old man looked at birds and 7 birds fell down. Man was surprised. "My God, how did this happen?" Old man replied, "When you can look with totality, your eyes can become arrow. You are a no voice, you couldn't even come to edge of cliff. If you are trembling inside, then your archery cannot be perfect. You may manage to hit targets, but that is not the point. Point is that you have an untrembling total presence, only then your total presence becomes as sharp as arrow." Then old man said, "You go back now and learn from this point. Target is not target, you are the target. Become total, and if am still alive, I will come and visit you to see whether I can give you recognition." 5 years passed. These 5 years, Archer tried his best to be total, and he succeeded. Old man came and asked, "Where are your bow and arrows?" Man replied, "It must have been 2 years, not that I haven't seen any bow or arrow, but it seems like centuries have passed. Now I can do what you were able to do." Old man didn't ask for any test and gave his recognition, saying, "I can see your eyes unwavering totality. I can see in your body spontaneous relaxedness. For your recognition, I have come down from hills. Now you can go and tell King that I recognize your talent." Learning. Zen can bring new valuation into everything. It transforms everything, negates nothing. Mind control and calmness can change a lot in our field of work. 45. Buddha and criminal. Once a man who was a well-known criminal, sinner. One day he decided to go meet Buddha. He wanted to be initiated and wanted Buddha's help, but he was afraid people might not allow him to enter at his place. So he decided to go at such time when there were not too many people. Instead of entering from main gate, he jumped from a wall of backside. By chance, Buddha was gone for begging at that time. Man was caught by Buddha's disciple. Man said, "I have not come to steal or anything. I am well known around here, hated and feared by most around here. I was just afraid that you wouldn't allow me through main gate, that's why I came from back. You might not believe, but I want to become sannyasi. That's why I came here." So, disciples who caught him took him to a disciple named Sariputra, who was a great astrologer and who had capacity to read people's past lives. Disciples asked Sariputra, "Please look into this man's past lives. In this life he is a murderer, a sinner, but maybe he earned some fortune in his past lives, and that's why now he wants to become sannyasi." Sariputra looked into his past thousands' lives, but he was always same. Even Sariputra started trembling and said, "He is so dangerous. For thousands' life he always a sinner. It is impossible. Any change in this man is impossible. Even Buddha can't do anything." Saying this, Sariputra asked disciples to take him out immediately. So that man was turned out. He felt hurt and thought that there is no chance for him to change. Alive, he couldn't be around Buddha. Thinking this, he wanted to commit suicide. So, just around main gate corner, he started to hit his head against stone wall to kill himself. Just then Buddha was returning from begging. Seeing man, he stopped him and took him inside. After few days, man was initiated and became a disciple of Buddha. Now, everybody was confused. Sariputra went to Buddha and said, "This man has lived 1,000 lives of misery and has been a sinner. How can this man become initiated in some days? If this man can be enlightened in some day, then what is point of looking into people's past lives?" Buddha replied, "You looked into his past but didn't look into his future. Any moment person decides to change, he can change. The very decision is decisive. This man has lived 1,000 lives of miseries, but now he hankers to change, and his intensity to change is infinite. Hence, in some days, he was able to initiate." 46. Anxiety Solution. Zen Master Bakuju. Once lived a Zen Master Bakuju. He used to live inside cave alone most of time. He would sometimes loudly say Bakuju, his own name, and the himself would say, "Yes, I am here." He would this any time, day or night. There were some disciples who used to follow him. They would hear this. Disciples were not able to understand its reason. So one day, one of his disciples asked him, "Why do you call your own name and then reply yourself to this?" Bakuju replied, "Wherever I get into thinking, I have to remember myself to be alert, so I call my own name Bakuju loudly, and moment I can, yes, I am here. All the thinking and anxiety disappears." When Bakuju got old in his last days for 2 or 3 years, he never called out his own name. Disciple asked, "Master, you used to say your name all the time, but now you never do this. Why so?" Bakuju replied, "Because Bakuju is always here. He is always there. Therefore, there is no need to call him. Previously, anxiety would take me, cloud all over me. So I had to call Bakuju, and that moment anxiety would disappear." Learning. You have to come to deep knowing of your own self and mechanism of inner working. If you become alert, anxiety will disappear. 47. Empty boat, anger within. Once a monk decided to meditate alone, away from his monastery. There was a lake nearby. Monk decided to take a boat out there and meditate there alone. In morning, monk takes his boat out and rowed it to middle of lake. Then he closed his eyes and began his meditation. After a few hours of undisturbed silence, he suddenly felt bump of another boat colliding with his own. Monk kept his eyes closed, but thinking about another boat, his anger started to rise. Monk thought to himself that he came to lake so that no one would disturb him, and still here came another boat and bumps into his boat. This thought made him angry. Monk with his eyes closed. He sensed his anger rising, and by the time he was about to open his eyes, he was ready to scream at the boatman who dared to disturb his meditation. But when he opened his eyes, he saw an empty boat that probably untethered and floated to the middle of lake. At that moment, Monk understood that the anger is within him, and it merely needs bump of an external object to provoke it out of him. From then on, whenever he came across someone who would irritated him or provoke him to anger, he would remind himself, "Other person is merely an empty boat. Anger is within me." 48. People, hypocrisy. Buddha was traveling from place to place. Once he decided to stop in a village for a few days. Soon people came to know about him and started to go to him to get his blessings. Some people would go to him to ask solution of their problems. One day, a woman came to him and said, "You look like a prince. May I know what is the reason for wearing ochre, bagua, cloth in this youth?" Buddha replied, "I retired to find solutions to questions about life. How body which is so young and attractive, but soon it will be aged and will eventually go to mouth of death. I have to gain knowledge about the cause of old age, sickness, and death." Impressed by them, woman invited him for a meal. Buddha agreed. Soon this news spread throughout the village. After knowing this, villagers came with head of village to meet Buddha. Everyone requested Buddha, "You should not go to that woman house for food, as she is characterless." Buddha asked village head, "Do you believe that woman is characterless?" Village head said, "I can take oath that she is woman of bad character, so please don't go to her house." Buddha held right hand of village head and asked him to clap. Village head replied, "How can I clap? I cannot clap with one hand because you have held my other hand." Buddha replied, "If you cannot clap with one hand, how can it be that woman is characterless itself unless men of this village are characterless? If man of village were of good character, then this woman would not have been like this, so men here are responsible from its character." Everyone was ashamed to hear this and silently walked away. 49. Zen Master Test for Boys. Once upon a time, on outskirt of a big city stood an old temple. Many young boys who wanted to study Buddhism would come to live in temple and to learn from Master, head Buddhist monk at temple. One day, Master decided to test his students, so he gathered all young boys around him and said, "My dear students, as you can see, I am growing old. I am not able to provide for needs of temple as I used to. I know I haven't yet taught you to work for money, but we need money to keep running this school at temple. So I can think of only one thing that can keep our school from closing." Students drew close to him with eyes wide open. Master continued, "As you all know, our nearby city is full of wealthy people. I want you all to go into city and follow those rich people as they walk through crowded streets or walk down deserted alleyways. And when no one is looking, absolutely no one is looking, you must steal from them. If you all can do this, then we can have enough money to keep our school alive." Young boy chorused in disbelief, "But Master, you have taught us that it is wrong to steal from anyone." Master replied, "Yes, indeed I have. It would be wrong to steal if it were not absolutely necessary. And remember, you must not be seen by anyone while stealing. If anyone can see you, you must not steal. Do you understand?" Boys looked nervously at each other and thought to themselves if something happened to their master. "Yes, Master," boys replied. Master replied, "Good. Now go and remember you must not be seen while stealing." Slowly, young boys started to get up and quietly began to go out of temple building. Master also got up and watched them go. When Master turned back, he saw one student still standing quietly in corner of room. "Why did you not go with others? Don't you want to save our school?" asked Master. "I do, Master," boy replied calmly. "But you said that we had to steal without being seen, and there is no place on earth that would not be seen, as for I would always see myself," said boy. "Excellent. This is just lesson that I hope my students would learn, but you were the only one to see it," exclaimed Master. Then Master asked him to go and ask everyone else to return to temple. Boy ran out and found his friends who were nervously gathered just out of sight of temple and trying to decide what to do. When they returned, Master explained them and all of them understood lesson. Moral: no matter what we do, we always have a part of ourselves that is quietly watching and that knows right from wrong and can guide us if we listen. 50. Archery skill. Once an accomplished young archer got to know about a Zen master who was famous for his prowess in archery. Young Archer was proud of his skills and went to Zen master and dared him to a test of their skills. On the day of test, both came on decided place. First was young man's turn. In first round, his arrows easily hit bull's eye on his targets. In next round, he split the first arrows into two. His proficiency was extraordinary. "Think you can match that?" he asked the old man condescendingly. Instead of responding, Zen master gestured him to follow him higher up on the mountains. After walking for a while, they arrived at a deep gorge. There was an old, unsteady log spanned the distance to other side. Zen master serenely walked on to the middle of the log and then aimed at a distant tree. In a clean movement, loosed an arrow flew straight into the tree trunk. "Your turn now," said he, stepping back casually onto the cliff edge. The youth stared into the chasm yawning below and trembled uncontrollably. He could not put a foot onto the log, much less take aim at anything beyond. The master observed, "You have great control over your bow, but little with the mind that lets loose the arrow." Moral: one should kill one's own ego to attain true power and skill. 51. 3 monks. Once 3 monks were sitting by a lake, deep in meditation. Just then one of them stood up and said, "I seem to have forgotten my mat at home. I should go back and bring it." Stepping onto the waters before him, he walked across to the other side where their small hut stood. He went inside, took him mat, and returned back by lake, where other 2 monks sitting. When he returned, second monk stood up and said, "I just remember, I haven't washed my clothes." Saying this, he too strode calmly across the water to the other side of lake and then returned in few minutes, same way. Third monk watched all this intently. Figuring that this was test of his own skills, he loudly declared, "So you both think that your abilities are superior to mine? Watch me." Saying this, he scurried to the edge of riverbank. No sooner did he put his foot in than he fell into waist-high water. Unfazed, he waded out and tried again and again and again to no avail. After watching this performance in silence, one of his fellow monks asked the other, "Should we tell him where the stepping stones are?" 52. Keichu Wisdom. In city of Kyoto lived a Zen master called Keichu. He was a head of huge cathedral in city. He was well respected for his astute perceptiveness. When Kitagaki took over as governor of city of Kyoto, he went to meet Keichu. Upon reaching cathedral, Kitagaki presented his business card to Keichu's attendant and asked him to let him know. Attendant asked Kitagaki to wait and went inside. Attendant bowed in front of master and said, "Master, there is someone to see you." Keichu asked, "Who is it?" Attendant gave Keichu the governor's calling card, which read, "Kitagaki, governor of Kyoto." Seeing card, Keichu threw it, saying, "I have nothing to do with this fellow. Tell him to leave right away." Attendant picked up the calling card and dashed to the hall where Kitagaki was waiting. "My apologies, dear sir. Master does not wish to see you," he told the governor, remorsefully returning his card. Kitagaki was startled. He took his card and was about to leave when he read words on his card, realizing his mistake. At once he took pen out of his pocket and scratched out something from his card. Then once again he gave his card to attendant saying, "Would you please be kind enough to ask your master one more time?" The attendant returned to Keichu's chamber and handed him the governor's card again. The card now simply read, Kitagaki. The governor had scratched out the words, Governor of Kyoto. Keiichi read the card and his eyes lit up. Oh, it is Kitagaki. Yes, I would like to see him now. Send him in, please, he told his attendant. 53. Good reflect back. Once a grocer got distressed at his work. So he went to his master and told him about reason for his distress. He said to master, a large chain store had opened across the way and it would drive me out of business. My family had been running this shop for centuries and I don't any other skill. If my shop get closed, that it would be a great loss to our family, and to lose it now would be his undoing. Master replied, if you fear the owner of chain store, that you will hate him, and then hatred will be your undoing. Then what shall I do? Asked distraught grocer. Master smiled and replied, each morning walk out of your shop onto the sidewalk and bless your shop. Wishing it prosperity, then turn to face the chain store and bless it too. Grocer got confused and questioned, what? I should bless my competitor? Master replied, any blessing you give him will rebound to your good. Any evil you wish him will destroy you. Grocer left and did as his master said. After 6 months, the grocer returned to report that he had had to close down his shop as he had feared, but he was now in charge of the chain store and his affairs were in better shape than ever before. Moral: always think good and do good for other, and it will reflect back to you. 54. Sacred wooden beads. Once there was huge temple built in center of lake. There lived great master and 20 of his disciples who would learn Buddhism teachings. There was a precious string of wooden beads which was sacred and was enshrined in temple. As temple was in middle of lake, it was connected to rest of world with a small boat, and it was not easy to go there. All disciples would concentrate on learning and were going to complete their study soon. Until one day, Master assembled everyone and announced that Buddha's sacred beads were lost. Everyone was shocked as temple was guarded 24 HRS in rotation by disciples themselves, so no one from outside could have sneaked in and stole those beads. Soon everyone who assembled there started to discuss about it and became suspect of others. Master saw this and said, I don't care about this matter. If only the one would admit his mistake and promise to treasure the Buddha beads. I am willing to give it to him. I am giving you all 7 days for consideration. No one confessed on first day nor on second day, and with time mutual respect and trust between young disciples who were soon going to become monk was gone. They talked no more. Even on 7th day, no one stood out for confession. At end of day, Master again assembled everyone and announced, I am glad that you have convinced me of your innocence. Even the temptation of the Buddha beads can't get you. You are resolute enough. All right, the practice has come to the conclusion. You can go home tomorrow then. After a while, when junior monks were ready to leave, they saw a blind monk knelt before Master. Seeing this, everyone scowled at him as they thought that he had confessed about his wrong deed and then left. After everyone left, Master turned to blind monk and said, Did you steal Buddha beads? Blind monk replied, I agree Buddha beads had lost, but heart of Buddha is still here, and I have come here for self-cultivation of Buddha's heart. Master asked, So, you didn't take those beads, then why are you sustaining all the suspicion? Blind monk replied, This suspicion has already hurt my heart, his heart and everyone's heart in the last 7 days. Someone had to sustain to resolve the suspicion. The great master took out the legendary Buddha beads from his robe and put it on his neck. He said, The Buddha beads is here. You are the only one to comprehend the true meaning of sustain. Moral: sometimes in life, we take the responsibility to resolve the conflicts, reduce the unnecessary disputes and the contradictions. People who are able to sustain will get a better mental development. and have more freedom and opportunities in their entire lives. 55. A useless life. A farmer got so old that he couldn't work the fields anymore, so he would spend the day just sitting on the porch. His son, still working the farm, would look up from time to time and see his father sitting there. "He's of no use anymore," the son thought to himself. "He doesn't do anything." One day the son got so frustrated by this that he built a wood coffin, dragged it over to the porch, and told his father to get in. Without saying anything, the father climbed inside. After closing the lid, the son dragged the coffin to the edge of the farm where there was a high cliff. As he approached the drop, he heard a light tapping on the lid from inside the coffin. He opened it up. Still lying there peacefully, the father looked up at his son. "I know you're going to throw me over the cliff, but before you do, may I suggest something?" "What is it?" replied the son. "Throw me over the cliff if you like," said the father, "but save this good wood coffin. Your children might need to use it." 56. Working very hard. A martial arts student went to his teacher and said earnestly, "I am devoted to studying your martial system. How long will it take me to master it?" The teacher's reply was casual, 10 years. Impatiently, the student answered, "But I want to master it faster than that. I will work very hard. I will practice every day, 10 or more hours a day if I have to. How long will it take then?" The teacher thought for a moment. 20 years. 57. The other side. One day, a young Buddhist on his journey home came to the banks of a wide river. Staring hopelessly at the great obstacle in front of him, he pondered for hours on just how to cross such a wide barrier. Just as he was about to give up his pursuit to continue his journey, he saw a great teacher on the other side of the river. The young Buddhist yells over to the teacher, "O wise one, can you tell me how to get to the other side of this river?" The teacher ponders for a moment, looks up and down the river, and yells back, "My son, you're on the other side." 58. Moving mind. Two men were arguing about a flag flapping in the wind. "It's the wind that is really moving," stated the first one. "No, it is the flag that is moving," contended the second. A Zen master who happened to be walking by overheard the debate and interrupted them. "Neither the flag nor the wind is moving," he said. "It is mind that moves." 59. It will pass. A student went to his meditation teacher and said, "My meditation is horrible. I feel so distracted, or my legs ache, or I'm constantly falling asleep. It's just horrible." "It will pass," the teacher said matter-of-factly. A week later, the student came back to his teacher. "My meditation is wonderful. I feel so aware, so peaceful, so alive." "It's just wonderful." "It will pass," the teacher replied matter-of-factly. 60. Cliffhanger. One day, while walking through the wilderness, a man stumbled upon a vicious tiger. He ran, but soon came to the edge of a high cliff. Desperate to save himself, he climbed down a vine and dangled over the fatal precipice. As he hung there, 2 mice appeared from a hole in the cliff and began gnawing on the vine. Suddenly, he noticed on the vine a plump, wild strawberry. He plucked it and popped it in his mouth. It was incredibly delicious. A king had many elephants. One of them was very powerful, obedient, and skilled in fighting. He went with King in many wars and was King's favorite. As time passed, Elephant got old and King cared for him and would not take him to war with him anymore. One day, Elephant went to nearby pond to drink water and his leg got stuck there. Elephant tried a lot but couldn't get himself out of pond. At last, he gave up. Soon, servants noticed Elephant and went toward pond. News of trapped Elephant reached King. Many people gathered there with King and many efforts were made to get Elephant out of that muddy pond, but still all went in vain. At same time, Gautama Buddha was passing by that place. People went to him and asked for help. Gautama Buddha inquired about the elephant and then inspected the spot. Then he said to King, "Drums of war should be played around elephant." King asked his servants to bring drums, and soon sound of drums of war surrounded elephant, and with that there was a change in expression of elephant. He stood up and tried coming out of muddy pond with enthusiasm by himself, and soon he was out. People were surprised to see that and asked Buddha, "We tried so much but still couldn't get him out, but now elephant came out by himself. How is this possible?" Buddha said, "There was no shortage of physical ability, we just needed to motivate him. Because elephant used to go to wars and he was not able to go there anymore, he lost his desire and will. Using drums helped him get his enthusiasm back." 61. Zen Master Bankei Yotaku. When Bankei held his seclusion weeks of meditation, pupils from many parts of Japan came to attend. Once during such gathering, a man was caught stealing. Whole incident was reported to Bankei. After hearing the case, Bankei didn't took any action and ignored the incident. Just after 1 day of previous theft, same man was caught stealing again. This time other people who were attending the gather demanding his expulsion from gathering. Even this time Bankei didn't took any action against him. Later that day, all people present there drew up a petition, asking for dismissal of thief, or else they all will leave that seclusion. When Bankei read that petition, he called everyone before him and said, "You are wise brothers. You know what's right and what's wrong. You may go somewhere else to study if you wish, but this poor brother doesn't even know right from wrong. Who will teach him if I don't? I'm not going to ask him to leave. I'm going to keep him here even if it means that all rest of you leave." Man who was caught stealing was also present there, and after listening to Bankei, torrent of tears came down and his all desire to steal was vanished. Moral: story encourages us not to rush judging people and learn to forgive, to compassionately help those who do not have the same tools that we have. We should strive to lift them up just as we strive to lift ourselves and those we love up despite their own flaws. 62. Salton Lake. Once a young man was very unhappy with his life. He felt depressed and terrible all the time. He got to know about a Zen master in nearby town. One day he decided to visit master and ask for solution. Young man went to him and said, "I have so many problems in life that I am always sad. Please tell me solution. How can I be happy?" Master listened to him carefully, then got up. Young man was confused to see him leaving without saying anything, but he waited for him. After a while, Master came back with a glass of water and a bowl full of salt. Master asked that young man to take a handful of salt from that bowl and put it in the glass and then drink that water. Young man was confused, but did as instructed by Master. 63. Buddha's plow and sow. One day, while a farmer was on the field getting his harvest ready to take to market, just then Buddha came by and stood in front of him holding a bowl in his hand, begging for alms. Seeing this, farmer got angry and said, "I worked in fields, I plowed and sow, and therefore I eat. It would be better if you were in like manner to plow and to sow, and then you would have food enough to eat without begging." Buddha smiled and replied, "Don't get angry. I plow and sow too, and having plowed and sown, I eat." Farmer replied, "If it's true, then where are your bullocks and seed? Where is your plow? I see no sign of it." Buddha answered, "Faith is the seed I sow, and good works are the rain that fertilizes it. Wisdom and good works are the parts of the plow, and my mind is the guiding rein. I lay hold of the handle of the law. Earnestness is the goad I use, and diligence is my daughter. Thus my plowing is done, destroying the weeds of delusion. The harvest that it yields is the ambrosia fruit of nirvana, and by this plowing all sorrow ends." 64. Sacrificing innocent creature. One day a man was preparing for sacrifice in honor of God. Whole lot of goats and sheep were bought together to be slaughtered. When the day of sacrifice came, Buddha visited man and they discussed many things. At last Buddha spoke about sacredness of all life, whether it's of man or animal. Buddha said, one cannot get rid of his sins and delusions by making innocent creatures suffer, for nothing but his own unbroken efforts after right doing and right thinking can avail a man. Buddha's words sank deep into man's soul, and he understood that pure heart and upright ways, which are of far higher value than a sacrifice necessitating the shedding of blood. Man decided that all those animals should be given freedom, and instead of being slaughtered, they should be left free to live their lives at their own will. 65. Spilling sand from bucket. Once a monk committed grave fault. A wise hermit was summoned to judge him. Hermit refused to judge, but still other monks insisted him to come and judge. At last, hermit agreed. On the day on judgment, he arrived on the place carrying a bucket of sand on his back. Bucket had a hole in it out of which sand was spilling. Hermit said to monastery superior, "I came to judge my brother. My sins are spilling out behind me like the sand from this bucket. But since I don't look back and notice my own sins, I was summoned to judge my brother." All other monk understood hermit meaning and gave up the idea of judging and punishing that monk. 66. Your own cross. One man complained all his life about all the problems he faced. He came to God and told him about his troubles. God looked at him and took him to the store of cross, where each cross represented the troubles a person facing in his life. God said, "Choose." Man was surprised and asked, "Can I choose a cross for myself?" God replied, "Yes, now come and choose, cross which you find best." Man came inside the store and started looking at all the crosses. He saw all kind of crosses, heavy, medium, big, little, light. While walking through the store, man looked for the lightest cross there. At last he found one, and came to God and said, "May I take this one?" God answered, "Yes, you may. It's your own cross." Moral: when we face problems in our life, we complain about it. But we should remember that everyone have their own fight, and what we face might be just smallest of troubles, what other face. 67. Try to see yourself. Once Japanese master said to his disciples, "When you look at your companions, try to see yourself." One of disciple questioned, "But master, isn't that an awful selfish attitude? If we see ourselves in everyone, we will always be just concerned about ourselves, and we will never be able to see good in others." Master replied, "If only we did always see good in others." Master continued, "Truth is, when we look at other, we are only looking for defects. We always try to discover their wicked side, just because we want to feel good for ourselves. We want them to be worse than us. We never forgive because we do no believe that we would have been forgiven. We hurt others with harsh words when all we are doing is hiding ourselves. That's why, whenever you judge someone, be aware that you are the one who is on trial. 68. Feast for robe. Once there was a Zen master who used to go door to door for alms. He always dressed in rags with an empty bowl in his hands. One day he went to the door of a rich man. Rich man, seeing his ragged clothes, returned him with empty bowl. Next day, same master came back to rich man house, but this time he was wearing a formal robe. This time rich man invited him inside and served him scrumptious meal. Master removed his robe and folded it. He placed it in front of the feast served by rich man and got up. Rich man was confused to see this and questioned, "What are you doing?" Master replied, "This meal is for the robe. "Not for me," and left. Moral: never judge someone by his looks. 69. Holy man advice. Once people of a village came to know about a wise holy man who used to live in a small house on mountain top which was very difficult to reach to. Thinking of difficulty to reach there, no one from village ever tried to visit him. One day, a man from village decided to take the long journey and meet that holy man. After quiet struggle and difficulty, he at last arrived at the top of mountain. There he saw a small house. He was tried from the journey, but anyhow reached at the door of that house. He knocked on the door. After a while, he saw an old man coming outside the house. Old man greeted him and asked him about his purpose to come. Man looked at him and said, "I would like to see your master, holy man who lives here. Would you please take me to him?" Old man smiled and led him inside house. As they were walking through house, man from village eagerly looked here and there, anticipating his encounter with wise man. But before he knew it, he was escorted back outside the house through the front door. Man was confused. Man said, "But I want to see holy man." "You already have," replied old man. Man was surprised to see that such simple-looking person was the holy man he came to meet. Man apologized for mistaking him as a servant and decided to take leave. As man was leaving, old man smiled and said, "Every time you meet someone, even if they seems to be plain and insignificant, you must see each of them as wise man. If you do this, then whatever problem you brought here today will be solved." Moral: we should not judge someone by his looks. 70. Disciple to monk. What is compassion? Once a young disciple came to his master and asked him, "Master, what is compassion?" Master took him to the window and asked him to look at the beggar sitting at the corner of the street. While looking at him for some time, they saw that an old lady passed by and gave him a gold coin. A merchant passed by and gave him 5 gold coins, and a boy who passed by that beggar gave him a flower. Now, Master questioned disciple, "Which one of all these do you think felt most compassion for beggar?" Young disciple replied, "Merchant did." Master smiled and explained, "You see that old lady passed by was infuriated by his poverty, so she gave him a gold coin. Old lady acted out of pity toward that beggar. After that, we saw a merchant noticed a small group of people who were talking about him, so he gave 5 gold coins to beggar and left quickly. Merchant acted out of pride. He wanted to show off his wealth to those people and show that he has big heart and like to help others. Later, we saw a boy who had collected some flowers in his hands for his mother, and when he passed by that beggar, he smiled at him and gave him a flower. That little boy is the one who acted out of compassion." Master continued and explained, "Compassion is far greater and nobler than pity. Pity has its roots in fear. When fear touches someone's pain, it becomes pity. But when love touches someone's pain, it becomes compassion. So to understand compassion, we should understand that all beings are same and suffer in similar way honor. We should honor all who suffer and know that we are neither separate nor superior to anyone." 71. What you want most. Once a young boy came to a monk meditating by a riverside. Young master came to master and said, "Master, I wish to become your disciple." Monk questioned, "Why?" Young man thought for a moment and replied, "Because I want to find God." Just then suddenly master jumped up and grabbed that young man by his neck. Master dragged him into the river and plunged his head under the water. Young man struggled to free himself. After a minute, master finally pulled him out of water. Young man was coughed up with water. After some time, when young man eventually quieted down, master questioned him, "Tell me, what you wanted most when you were underwater?" "Air," answered young man. Master replied, "Very well. Go home and come back to me when you want God as much as you wanted air inside water." 72. Words to encourage prosperity. Once a rich man went to a Zen master and requested him to write down something that would encourage prosperity of his family for years to come. Master took a large paper and wrote, "Father dies, son dies, grandson dies." When rich man read that paper, he got angry at Master and said, "Master, I asked you to write something that could bring happiness and prosperity, then why would you write and give me something so depressing?" Master explained, "If your son dies before you, that would bring unbearable grief to your family. Similarly, if your grandson dies before your son, it would also bring great sorrow to your family. But if your family generations after generations disappear in order I described, it would be natural course of life, and that would be true happiness and prosperity." Rich man now understood what Master meant and thanked him for his blessings. 73. Changing appearance versus inner self. A young disciple wanted to learn wisdom, so he went to Zen Master and requested him to accept him as his disciple. Master accepted him. Young disciple used to admire his master a lot, so he decided to observe his behavior minutely and believed that if he did everything the way his teacher did, then he would be able to acquire the same wisdom as his master. So he started imitating his master working and do things as his master did. Firstly, he started to wear white clothes, as his master used to wear white clothes. Secondly, he started sleeping on straw mattress as his master did. Thirdly, young disciple was non-vegetarian, but when he noticed that master ate only vegetables and herbs, he replaced his diet with vegetables and herbs. He started eating similar to what his master ate. His master noticed all this changes in his disciple behavior and understood what's going on, so he called him to his room. When disciple came, master asked, "Why did you change?" Young disciple replied, "I am climbing step of initiation. Color of my clothes shows the simplicity of me. Vegetarian food purifies my body, and lack of comfort brings me more close to nature and spiritual things." Master smiled and took him to a field where horse was grazing and said, "Look at horse. He has white skin and eats only grass and sleeps in stable on straw bed. Do you think that he is a teacher or saint?" Master continued, "All this time you spent was on the outside of yourself, but what matters most is the inner self." Disciple understood what Master said and continued to work hard for spiritual enlightenment, not from just outside, but inside from his heart. Moral: to understand and learn wisdom, we need to find and change our inner self, not just the outer self. 74. Comparing ourselves with others. Once a samurai went to visit a Zen monk to seek some advice. As he entered temple where masters were praying, see this he felt inferior and felt that, in spite of having fought for justice and peace, he hadn't even come near state of grace which was achieved was monks praying there. As monk finished prayers, he went to him and said, "I have faced death many times, defended weak, helped people in need, and I know I have never done anything to be ashamed of. Yet when I see you meditating, I feel like my life have no importance and I feel so inferior." Monk replied, "I will answer you once I attend all those who came to see me. Wait till then." Samurai waited whole day, watching people go in and out for advice. He saw that monk received all of them with patience and smile on his face. At nightfall, when everyone was gone, he went to monk and said, "Can you teach me now?" Monk invited him inside and led him to his room. The full moon shone in the sky, and the atmosphere was one of profound tranquility. Monk pointed toward moon and said, "Do you see moon? It will cross the entire firmament, and tomorrow the sun will shine once again, but you know sunlight is brighter and it shows us the details of nature. Should mood ask why I don't shine like sun? Is it because I am inferior to sun?" Samurai answered, "Of course not. They both are different and have their own beauty. You cannot compare the two." Here is your answer. We are two different people and we each are fighting in our own way for what he believes, making it possible for the world to a better place, replied Monk. Moral: we should not compare ourselves with others and feel inferior to others just because they follow a different path. Everyone have to follow their own path in their life to be a better person and making world a better place. 75. How to get rid of fear of death. Once a young man went to his master and said, "Master, I fear death. How can I get rid of this fear?" Master said, "Tell me, when you borrow some coins from someone, then are you afraid to give them back?" "Of course not. I will not be afraid," young man replied. Young man didn't understand why did his master ask such questions, so he inquired, "But master, what does it have to do with my fear?" To explain this, master picked up some soil from ground and said, "You are made from dust. You have received your body in debt with required return. With every bite of bread and every sip of water drank by you, you increase that debt. Dust on which you walk is your main creditor, constantly reminding you of this debt." Master threw soil into air, and after it fell down back into ground, he said, "No matter how high you rise, how long you are in flight, you still need to fall down. An end ground will swallow you whole without any remains. So to cool up with this fear, stop thinking about yourself as master of your body and accept truth that you are just a tenant. Because you don't know the length of your rent, always remember it can end at any second. We are all debtors, and in end our debts will certainly be recovered, no matter if we are afraid or not." Master smiled and continued, "So tell me, is there a point of being afraid or being feared?" Moral: our life is small and we need to understand that no one can live forever. So if we want to live life, then we should try to accept death as we accept life. 76. Early life of Gautama the Buddha. Gautama was a prince of a small princely state. When he was born, some yogi predicted that he will either become a great emperor or a great sage. When he made this prediction, Gautama's father got a little excited. He did not want him to become a great sage. He wanted him to become a great emperor. He thought that by being exposed to some suffering or misery, he may turn into a sage. So he kept him in utter pleasure, the best of food, clothes, and pleasures. When he was 19 years of age, his father got him married to a very pretty young woman, kept him in a palace which was secluded from the rest of the society, where he lived in pleasure and was never exposed to any kind of suffering. One day, Gautama thought that he will just take a drive through the town, so he asked his charioteer to take him across. As he was going, he saw a man who was old. He had never seen an old man in his life. His father had protected him from all this. He said, "What happened to him?" The charioteer said, "Oh, he is just an old man." "How does it happen?" he asked. He said, "Everyone gets old someday." He looked at himself. He was a nice youth. "What, me also?" he said. "Yes, everyone gets old. If they live long enough, they get old." This was a realization for him that I will become like this. Then he saw a man lying on the street who was ill with something, not able to get up and in great suffering. He said, "Stop! What is this guy? What's he doing?" He said, "Oh, he is sick, unfortunately." "What does that mean?" He said, "The body, sometimes it gets sick. It can happen to just anyone. Me, a prince, it can happen to me. It can happen to anyone." Then he saw, "Oh, I can become like this." He was completely disturbed by this. Then they went further, and he saw a funeral. They were carrying the dead body of a man. "What happened to that guy?" "Oh, he just died. That's all." What does that mean? That happens to everyone without exception. Then he said, "What am I doing? Just eating, pleasures, and nonsense. What am I doing with myself?" He went into turmoil within himself. Suddenly, being a prince and the pleasures of this palace broke apart for him. He started looking. What is the point of all this? This body is going to get old. This may get sick, and this will be dead for sure. Why am I investing my entire life in this? But by then he had an infant boy. He could not leave this loving wife and this lovely little baby. He struggled and struggled. By then, a little over 1.25 years had passed. When the little boy was 1.5 years of age, he could not hold it anymore. In the middle of the night, without telling anyone, he slipped out of the palace like a thief and left for good. He went in search. I want to know the truth about this life. Buddha's path to enlightenment. These are times when different schools were established in India. At one point, there were over 1,800 different ways of doing things, 1,800 different varieties of yoga. It is like how the medical science is becoming today. 25 years ago, if you wanted a medical checkup, all you needed was your family doctor. Today, there is a doctor for every part of your body. Similarly, this happened to the yogic system. People started specializing in a variety of small things. When specialization crosses a certain point, it becomes ridiculous. This happened to yoga. It crossed that point where 1,800 different specializations of yoga happened. That is when Patanjali came and kind of assimilated everything into Yoga Sutras to minimize this expanse that was growing endlessly. When Gautama came, it was post-Patanjali, but still there were many things. He went from school to school and he pursued 8 different forms of samadhi. He saw all of them were wonderful experiences, but it still did not liberate him. In this condition, he started walking as a samana, which is a certain system where their fundamental practice is that they will never ask for food. They do not go in pursuit of food because they want to beat the fundamental instinct of survival. Samanas used to just walk, never asking for food, but the culture was sensitive. If they saw a spiritual person walking, people would cook at home and run behind him and serve him wherever he was because they knew that he will not ask for food. If you become a samana today, you will walk yourself to death. Those days, people were sensitive to his sadhana and responded, so there were thousands of samanas walking the country. Gautama became a samana. Even if you are not asking for food, you may walk near a town so that food will come. But Gautama took it too seriously and just walked. He became just bones and a bag of skin. Then he came to a place where there was a river called Niranjana. It was just about 18 to 20 inches of water and he stepped into it. Halfway down into the river, he did not have the energy to cross. There was a dead branch and he just held on to it. He did not have the strength to take the next step, but he is not the kind of man to let go. He held on. We do not know for how long. Maybe it was 2 minutes. When you are feeling so weak, those 2 minutes might have looked like many years. Then, as he hung on, he just realized, what is it that I am striving for? What is it I am wandering the entire country for? Going from school to school, learning this, learning that, what is it that I am looking for? Then he realized, there is really nothing. This life is on. All I have to do is just take away the barriers which are not allowing me to experience this. How Gautama became a Buddha. When he realized that everything is within him and there is nowhere to search, he suddenly had the energy to take the next step and the next step. He crossed the river and sat down under that now very famous Bodhi tree. It was a full moon night. He sat there with this determination. Either I must see the ultimate nature of my existence now, or I will sit here and die. I will not open my eyes till I know this. Once he made that resolve to know what is within you can happen in a moment. When he saw that you do not have to do anything in particular for realization, he was fully enlightened, and the moon was shining. He had not eaten properly for many years. He was a samana for 4 years and he had gathered 5 disciples. These guys thought, he is real. Because he does not eat, he is really rigid. And now they saw that he is in some exuberant state, and they could see the light on his face. Then they were waiting for him to open his eyes and give the teaching. He opened his eyes, looked at them, smiled, and said, "Cook something. Let's eat." They were totally disappointed. They thought, he has lost it. They walked with him for 4 years when he had nothing but torture, but when he got enlightened, they left him because they wanted to hear something severe. But he said, "Cook something. Let's eat. We have been wasting our time." 77. Buddha and the Astrologer. One day, after he had become a Buddha, Gautama went and sat down under a tree. Not because a tree is the best place to sit under, but because that was the only real estate of those times. There were not so many buildings everywhere. A tree was a pleasant place to sit under rather than sitting in harsh sun. An astrologer of great proficiency in his trade came for a bath in the river and saw a footprint on the riverbank. There are observations through which, by looking at the way one's feet are, someone can predict exactly what he will do. He saw that this is the footprint of an emperor, someone who should rule the world. Then he wondered, why would such a person be in this remote place near a jungle? And he followed the footprint, thinking he will meet an emperor. Then he saw this monk, Gautama, sitting under a tree. He looked at this and thought, either my astrology has gone all wrong, or I am being fooled, or I am in some kind of hallucination. What's happening here? He went to Gautama and asked, "Who are you?" Gautama said, "I am nobody. I am just a nobody." "But you have the feet of an emperor. You should conquer the world." Gautama said, "That I will, but not by conquest." There are 2 ways you can have the world, either by conquest or by inclusion. Both ways something or someone becomes yours. But if you go by conquest, it will always be a pain in your neck. If you include, this will become a great enhancement of life. He said, "I am the emperor of the world." The astrologer said, "You are a monk. You own nothing." "I own nothing, and I am a nobody. That is why everything is mine." Becoming a no thing does not mean that you are no use. When you are a no thing, it means that you have become all-inclusive. If you are something, it means that you can only be that. If you are a no thing, you can be any way you want. This astrologer sat down and said, "You are a monk. You have nothing. On top of it, you say, 'I am a nobody, and everything is mine.' What is this?" Gautama said, "You come. I have a way for you. You are busy making predictions of life. I have a plan." You make predictions of life because you are incapable of making a plan. That is why you fall back on predictions. If you are capable of making a plan and executing it, you would not fall back on predictions. Gautama said, "You are busy making predictions. I am here. I have a plan. Come, become a part of my plan. We will make something else happen." 78. When Buddha sent a man's father to heaven. In India, when your parent or grandparent dies, there is an elaborate system as to what to do. It happened that a man died and his son wanted to ensure his father goes to heaven. In the town, there are many travel agents who book tickets to heaven. He went from travel agent to travel agent and everyone was willing to take the booking, but no one had a confirmed ticket. But he wanted a confirmed ticket for his father. Then he found out that Gautama the Buddha himself was in town on that day. An enlightened being means that he has a hotline with God. If he himself recommends your father goes straight into heaven without being stopped at the gates. So he went looking for him. Gautama was sitting under a tree in front of a huge lake outside the town. He went and fell at his feet and held onto his feet like an alligator and said, "My father was a good man and he passed away. I want you to make sure that he goes to heaven. He must go up, not down." Before Gautama could open his mouth, he said, "You should not say no." There is a tradition in India that if someone comes to you and requests, "I am going to ask you something," you should not say no. That means you cannot say no because he is that desperate about it. You have no choice. So Gautama said, "Now what can I do? You have already put this stricture on me. I cannot say no. All right, you do one thing. Go back home. Have a dip in the river at 4 o'clock in the morning. Take an earthen pot and fill it half with rocks and half with butter. Tie it with a cloth. Bring it here and we will see what we can do for your father." Our man went. "If your father is going to heaven, can you take a small pot?" He bought the biggest pot available in the town, filled it half with rock, another half with butter, and tied it up. He carried this very heavy pot with great difficulty and came and stood in front of Gautama. Gautama looked at him and said, "Go around the lake 3 times and come." This is called as circumambulation. There is a science behind it, but now people take it to ridiculous lengths of going around everything 3 times. Gautama said, "Go around the lake 3 times and come." The man walked around the lake 3 times carrying this heavy pot. He was half finished when he came and stood in front of Gautama. Gautama looked at his condition and his determination. He told him, "Just walk into the water till the water comes to your chest." He went in. Then Gautama said, "Gently let the pot in." The pot went in and sank. Gautama picked up a thick stick, threw it to him and said, "Take the stick and now with a single stroke you must break the pot." The pot was under the water and the man was tired. Breaking this with a single stroke is a difficult task. "But your father is going to heaven. Can you give up?" He stood there and got ready. The man thought of all the gods that he knew and held his breath. Then Gautama said, "If you break it in one single stroke, the stones will come and float on the surface, the butter will sink. Then your father has made it." In one hefty stroke, the pot broke and the butter came up. He looked at this sacrilege. Butter came up. Now what to do? He looked at Gautama. Gautama said he did not make it. Butter came up when stones were supposed to come up, and the man felt totally disappointed and dejected. Then he turned around and started walking back. As he started coming out of the water, his brain started to work. He came to Gautama and asked, "You said that butter will sink and stones will float. How is that possible? The very laws of nature are such that stones can only sink, butter can only float. Did you deceive me?" Gautama said, "Oh, now that you know so much about the laws of nature, what is the problem? If your father is like butter, he will go up. If he is like a stone, he will go down. What can I do about it? And what can you do about it? You look very tired. Go home and sleep." 79. Buddha and Angulimala. There was a man. The name that people gave to him was Angulimala. Something happened to him. He felt the society has been unfair to him and he became an angry man. When you are young, you think everything is unfair to you. So he became very angry with the society and he took a vow. In this town, which had been unfair to him, he was going to kill 101 people and cut off one of their fingers and wear it as a rosary around his neck. He went about doing this. He was housed in a jungle, but this was the pathway to go to many other places. People were terrified to go this way. Over a few years, he killed 100 people. He just wanted one more to satisfy his lust. One day, Gautama the Buddha came to this town. By now, because he was wearing a garland of these fingers, they called him Angulimala. That means one who wears fingers as his garland. He needed just one more finger to complete his vow. Gautama came and he was to go that way. People said, "Do not go this way. This is not a man. This is an animal. This is not someone you can go and give a teaching to or make meditative. Do not go because he wants just one more life. We do not want yours to be that one." Then Gautama said, "If I do not go, who will go? And he will remain unfulfilled. He just needs one more finger. Let me go." So he went. Angulimala was sitting on a rock and he saw this monk coming quietly. By now, He was enjoying his reputation. People were terrified of him, and he liked it. People tremble at just the mention of his name. So sitting there on the rock, he roared just to make this monk know that, "I am here, and this is your incoming." Gautama looked at him and kept walking quietly with a smile on his face. He did not like this. Usually when they saw him or heard him, people ran helter-skelter, wanting to save their lives. He liked that. This man was just walking. He jumped off the rock, came and stood in front of him and said, "Who the hell are you? And do you know who I am?" He showed his mala, all fingers. "Do you know about me?" Gautama said. "Well, I have heard a lot about you. What about it?" And he kept walking. "Where do you think you are going? You are still going when I am talking to you?" Gautama said, "My going stopped a long time ago. I have arrived. You are the one who are trying to go somewhere." Then Angulimala laughed. He said, "Rubbish. You are definitely an insane man. I am standing still, and you say that I am going. You are walking, and you say you are not going. What's wrong with you?" Gautama said, "I have arrived a long time ago. I am not going anywhere. You are the one who is trying to go somewhere, but you do not know how to go there. You want my finger or you want my neck. You have already got fingers. You can hang my head and it will be a good pendant for the necklace. Because I am done. I have arrived. It does not matter whether I am physically here or not. You can do what you want." The pleasure of killing is only when they are terrified and do not want to die. When someone wants to die and they do not care, what is the use of killing this guy? And it looks like even if he kills this guy, his lust for 101 lives will not be fulfilled because this guy does not give him the pleasure. Then he said, "Wait, you tell me, what is this about? You are moving and you are saying that you have arrived and you are not moving. I am not moving and you say I am moving. You are looking for fulfillment in your own way." 101. I am fulfilled. This is the big difference. And you can take my life. If you think you're going to be fulfilled, do it, because my work is to fulfill people. If it is going to happen so easily that you are going to be fulfilled without a teaching, just by slashing my throat, just do it. What is the problem? Then Angulimala became his disciple. Gautama said, "You must go into the town from which you have killed 100 people." Gautama's monks were called bhikkhus. Bhikkhu literally means beggar. He gave him a yellow cloth and a begging bowl. He said, "Go look for some food in the town." In a small town, 100 dead people means that almost every family had lost someone to this man. Angulimala came into the town as a monk. People saw this, and they were terrified. They did not know why he had come. They all went and stood on their terraces because they were afraid of what he would do. Then when they saw that he had become tamed, he was not the same fierce man, they started throwing stones at him because each family had lost someone to him. So he continued. Stones hit him, and he was bleeding all over. Then when the stone throwing became a little excessive, Gautama came and asked the people to stop and said, "This is not the same man. This man is an extension of me. You are throwing stones at me. Just stop. There is no point in killing this man because this man has come to realization in a very hard way. You cannot waste this man now by killing him." Angulimala became a star disciple and went all over the country spreading Buddha's way of living and knowing. But they continued to call him Angulimala because he wore those fingers around his neck. 80. The story of Buddha and Ananda. Ananda's actual relationship to Gautama was his cousin brother. When Gautama started initiating people into monkhood, Ananda came and said, "I will also become a monk, but if I become your disciple, I am going to put one condition and you must listen because I am your elder brother. I am going to become your disciple, but I am always going to be with you. You will never send me on any errands. I am always going to be your shadow." Gautama looked up and said, "It is up to you. I have no problem. If you want to become a disciple and you want to put a condition, you will never get the taste of being a disciple. The moment you put a condition, you have just destroyed all possibilities to life." Gautama laughed and said, "Okay." When he had this condition, he fulfilled the condition. He has no problem. Once, Gautama decided to visit his wife, whom he had not seen for more than 8 years. He had left in the middle of the night when his child was a very small infant. Yashoda was a very proud woman. She was very hurt that he left in the middle of the night without a word. He left the kingdom, his son, his wife, and walked away without saying anything. 8 years later, he went to see her because he wanted this possibility that he had experienced to become possible for her. Gautama said to Ananda, "Now, I am going to meet my wife. Please stay away, you are not needed. She is already very offended and angry that I left in the middle of the night. Now, if I take you as a companion and go there to meet my wife, she won't take it properly. You please stay here for this." Ananda said, "Keep your word." It was a very uncomfortable situation. Gautama is not the type to break his word. He said, "All right," and he took Ananda along to meet his wife. She was furious, she threw tantrums, she yelled at him, she called him a coward. He listened quietly. Then he told her, "That man who married you is no more, that man is gone. But I am here, now I am Buddha, I am a realized being. Whatever was possible for that man was maybe a few more children. But now something tremendous is possible. This man is totally different. Please look at me, I am not the same person." She said, "Nothing doing. You are my husband." These are all conditions on relationships like Ananda's. You are a coward, and you left this little son. He does not even know who his father is. You ran away. She had many things to say. She said everything that she wanted to say. Gautama said, "That is fine." Then Yashoda played the usual trick. She said, "What is it that you are going to give your son?" She brought her son and said, "Ask your father what he is going to give you." Gautama had come prepared. He called Ananda and said, "Please bring my begging bowl." He brought the begging bowl. He called his son and said, "I do not want you to suffer as a king, so I am giving you the ultimate freedom. My legacy is my begging bowl." He handed his begging bowl to his 8-year-old son, and he became a sannyasi. Ananda destroyed his possibility by just one condition. He missed it all. When Gautama was on his deathbed, only the enlightened disciples went inside. All the others were left outside. Ananda cried and said, "I was so close to him, but I am left out of his circle. Why? Why did it not happen to me?" When people asked the same question to Gautama, he said, "How can a spoon taste the soup?" If you want to taste the soup, you need that awareness of the tongue. The moment you set conditions in life, you become inanimate. You get reduced to a thing and you try to reduce the other thing, but that other thing is away from you. That was the unfortunate thing with Ananda. 81. Does God exist? A very wonderful incident occurred in Gautama the Buddha's life. On a certain morning, he was sitting in a congregation of his disciples and one person came. He was a devotee of Rama. He has been doing only Rama, Rama, Rama all his life. And he has not only been to the temple, he has built many temples himself. He was a great devotee. Age was passing away now and a little doubt came. All my life I have been doing only Rama, Rama, Rama. There are so many people here who do not believe in God, and they are still enjoying themselves in the world. I have missed everything just to utter the name of God. Suppose there is no God, as others are saying, I will miss my whole life. He knows that there is God, but he had just a little doubt. Anyway, there is an enlightened being here. He is supposed to know. He went to Gautama. Early morning, before the sun came up, he stood in the shadows and asked, "Is there God?" Gautama looked at the man and said, "No." For the first time, he said a clear no. For all the disciples there, this was a struggle within them all the time, whether there is God or no God. This is a tremendous struggle, which has been on for thousands of years. Ever since man started existing on this planet, this struggle has been on within him. The struggle is on for both believers and non-believers. For the first time, Gautama said an emphatic no, and there was a big sigh of relief. You do not have to struggle anymore. There is no God. No one is snooping on you. You can do whatever you want with your life. The joy of it. There was a big relief. In the evening, another man came. This man was a Sharvaka. These are out-and-out materialists who do not believe in anything other than what they see. Those times in the country, there used to be professional Sharvakas. They would come to your town and throw a challenge. I will prove to you that there is no God. If you prove to me that there is God, I will give you so much money. But if I prove to you that there is no God, you must give me so much money. This is their profession. He was an expert Sharvaka. You may have been believing in God for 50 years, but if you speak to him for 15 minutes, he will prove to you that there is no God. He has proven that there is no God to thousands of people. His age was passing away, and a little doubt came. Suppose there is God. After proving no God for so long, when I go there, will he leave me alone? Already these believers say that God is very vengeful. Will he leave me alone? A little fear came. He knew that definitely there is no God, but just a little doubt came. He came to Gautama in the evening after the sun had set, and standing in the shadows, he asked the same question, "Is there God?" Gautama looked at the man and said, "Yes." There was turmoil in the disciples again. In the morning, they were very happy that there is no God. In the evening, he says that there is God. What is Gautama playing at? What is the game anyway? Is he just trying to create confusion? Now the whole game is to take off all the belief so that you really search. With belief, you have only destroyed the search. 82. How Buddha started Zen. On a particular day, Gautama came and sat on the dais. Hundreds of disciples were waiting for him to speak. There was one person in this group who was known as Mahakashyap. The rest of the community there had decided that he was crazy because he never comes and listens to Gautama Buddha's talks. He never meditates or does anything. He simply sits under a tree like a fool. He is not a smart spiritual man. He simply sits there. Everyone had just given him up as a fool to whom you cannot teach anything. On this day, Gautama came and sat. He had a flower in his hand. He just went on looking at the flower. People were waiting for him to speak, but he was so engrossed in the flower that he never said a word. Minutes went into hours, but he was simply looking at the flower. He never bothered to speak. Suddenly, Mahakashyap broke into laughter. He laughed uproariously. Then Gautama looked at Mahakashyapa and the rest of the crowd and said, "What I can give in words, I have given you. What I cannot give in words, I have given it to Mahakashyap." That was the beginning of Zen. There is no science, teaching, scripture, method, or practice. You simply sit and wait. When it happens to you. Zen is a crazy way, but a very wonderful way because there is absolutely no bondage anywhere. But if Zen has to happen, there has to be a Mahakashyap. There has to be someone who is in that level of perception. Otherwise, it does not happen. What happened between Buddha and Mahakashyapa is the first recorded moment of Zen in the world. It could have happened so many times before, but it did not become a spiritual path as such. 83. Buddha says, "Drop it." On a certain day, a man came to see Gautama the Buddha. Gautama was sitting alone in a small enclosure, and the man came with 2 handfuls of flowers because, in India, that is a normal way to greet your guru. As the man came towards him, Gautama looked at him and said, "Drop it." When he said this, the man thought that because he had brought these flowers as an offering, Gautama was telling him to drop it. Then he thought, maybe it is inauspicious because I am carrying it in my left hand. This is also a part of the culture that if you give something to someone with your left hand, it is considered inauspicious. So he dropped the flowers in his left hand and then went on in an appropriate way. Gautama looked at him once again and said, "Drop it." Now he did not know what to do. What was wrong with the flowers? He dropped the rest of the flowers. Then Gautama said, "I said drop it, not the flowers. The one who brought the flowers, you have to drop that. Otherwise you will not know the Buddha. You will come, you will bow down, you will listen, and you will go, but you will not know what it means to be with an enlightened one. You will completely miss the possibility. If you want to add a completely new dimension to your life, you have to drop that, not something else. Dropping your work, family, or this and that does not mean anything. Right now, what you call as myself is just a bundle of thoughts, emotions, ideas, opinions, and belief systems. If you do not drop that, where is a new possibility? Are you just trying to decorate the old stuff with some extras? That is not going to help. That's going to make things more difficult. But if you just say drop it, it does not drop off, so there are methods and procedures to be brought in so that this dropping happens. 84. Why Buddha sent a monk to a prostitute. Gautama and his disciples were constantly moving from village to village and from town to town. Wherever he went, he had at least 2,000 to 3,000 monks with him. These were all people who beg for their food and eat. India is a culture where if a spiritual person comes to your door and asks for food, even if your own children have not eaten, you must first give it to him. When people were like this, every time he entered a town with 2,000, 3,000 monks, suddenly there would be a pressure on the villagers. So he made a rule that they should never stay in any place for more than 3 days so as to not burden the people. Only during the monsoons it would be very difficult to travel by foot through the jungles because the northern and eastern part of the Indian subcontinent receives heavy rains. Walking through the jungles would have been treacherous, and many would have lost their lives. Therefore, this was a time when they stayed in a larger town and spread across many homes. During the day, the monks went out for alms. Ananda Tirtha encountered a courtesan. She gave him alms, looked at him, a tall and handsome young man, and said, "I heard that monks are looking for shelter. Why don't you come and stay in my house?" Ananda Tirtha said, "I must ask the Buddha as to where I should stay." She became really taunting. "Oh, you want to ask your guru? Go and ask him. Let's see what he says." Ananda went back to Gautama and put what he had collected at his feet. Everyone was supposed to find food and shelter wherever they go. So Ananda asked, "This lady is inviting me. Can I stay there?" Gautama said, "If she is inviting you, you must go and stay there." Upon hearing that, the townspeople who were around were up in arms. They said, "What? A monk is going to stay at a prostitute's home? This is it. This spiritual process has become corrupt." Gautama looked at them and said, "Why are you so worried? The lady is inviting him. Let him stay there. What is the problem?" People started to get up. He said, "Wait, I'm on this path because I see that this is the most precious and powerful way to live. Now you are telling me that her ways are more powerful than mine. If that was the truth, I should go and join her. As a true seeker, that is how it should be. If you find something much higher, you should go for that." People were in high dudgeon, and of course, many left. Ananda went and stayed with her. Because of the rains, it got cold. He was only wearing a thin robe, so she gave him a nice silk wrap. He covered himself with it. When people saw this, they took it as evidence that he was going astray. She cooked nice food for him. He ate. In the evening, she danced for him. He sat watching with utmost attention. When people heard the music, they thought he had fallen. Time passed. When the rain stopped and it was time to move on, Ananda came to Gautama with a female monk. This is the power of being on the path of truth. 85. A mother asks Buddha to revive her dead son. On a certain day, a woman who was the mother of 3 young boys lost her husband and was grief-stricken. Naturally, after this, she clung on to the 3 children as her life. But the eldest boy also died after a year, and soon after, the second one also passed away. Now she clung on to her only child for dear life, but this boy also died soon after. Unable to bear this, she took the little boy's body and went to Gautama the Buddha. She said, "You and all your spirituality, whatever you are talking does not mean anything unless you bring this boy to life. My husband died, and I somehow bore that. My first boy died, and then the second one too. I still held on. Now the last one is also gone. If you are real, prove it now by bringing this boy to life." Gautama looked at the woman and knew that in this state of inflamed emotion, whatever he could say or do would not get across. So he said, "I will bring your boy back to life. Go and get me a few sesame seeds from a house that has never known death." Carrying the boy's body, the woman went from house to house, looking for one that had never known death. After going through the entire town, she realized there wasn't a single home like this. Then she stopped, did what she had to do with the body, came back and sat in front of Gautama. She remained with him right through her life. 86. How Buddha died. Gautama, the Buddha, died of poisoning. His food was poisoned, and after eating it he realized this, and he knew that he cannot take it. The host first fed Buddha, and they prepared the meal for all the monks who were with him. So he said, "You have given me wonderful food. I have eaten it, but I do not think my disciples can digest this food. You must be satisfied with your hospitality that I have eaten. Do not feed it to my people." So he went down. He was not dead yet, but lying there, ill. The disciples gathered, so he had to speak to them and give them some guidance on how to take this ahead because he came to an unexpected end. He would have lived for a few more years. He was unable to sit up. He could not speak lying down, so he just supported his head and spoke. That pose became the pose of Gautama's Mahaparinirvana, as it is called. That pose became very sacred for the Buddhists. There are many images of Buddha lying down because the last message, the basic direction he gave as to how this movement should go on was at that time. Many Buddhists started lying down like this. It is a culture. You can imitate the pose, but you cannot become a Buddha.